You're watching Black College America and Coronavirus, the live digital conference for Black students and recent graduates trying to stay both sane and successful during the coronavirus. And now bringing on the greats, featuring Imani Ellis, Andrea Jabal, Tiffany Lofton, Kennedy Edwards, Michael Franklin, Danielle Gethers, Branche Faustin, Dr. Angela Riley, Khalil James, He-Man Armstrong, George Achiem Pong Jr., Marsha Barnes, Dr. Shenna Woods, Raven Waters, and more, including student leaders from Princeton University, MIT, Binghamton University, and Howard University. With opening remarks by Andrea Jabal and Kennedy Edwards. Hosted and moderated by Claudianne Francis, rising junior at Binghamton University. And it's all going down. Get ready for an action-packed conference ahead, starting right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming and being a part of Black College America and Coronavirus, the live digital conference for Black college students and recent graduates trying to stay both sane and successful during the coronavirus. We join together in a time of uncertainty in our schools, our internships, and even our livelihoods. This year, more than ever, we are forced to push on the gas and make things happen for a more equitable future for us all. In 1973, Black leaders like Angela Davis and Fannie Lou Hamer came together to discuss an array of topics affecting the Black community. Many more discussions and movements have happened since then. Through all of these movements and collective efforts, we have seen the rise of powerful Black institutions. We have come a long way, and we should take this time to celebrate our progress and bask in our joy, our strength, and our power. However, there is still more work to be done. Change begins with the actions that we take collectively. As a body of people, we have the duty, responsibility, and utmost power to take up space in student government and national offices of power. I brought together powerful Black voices to discuss the issues that are pressing in our community. Specifically, the issue that Black people are the most affected by COVID-19, and ways you can move forward stronger and better than ever. No matter what state you come from, no matter what you're majoring in, what school you attend, no matter your career goals, you all deserve a place here as leaders, collectively, to make change happen for ourselves as a unit. Because at the end of the day, who else will? A pandemic struck, tensions rose, there were murder hornets of all things, and we prevailed. You all made it through another year of school. Some of you graduated, and some of you are nervous about what the future holds. Well, the only thing to be nervous about is the possibility of you not using your voice. The good thing is that depends on you. All we can do is give you the tools to help you make the most out of your political power, economic power, and academic power. It's up to you to use them. I'm looking forward to conversations about the Black vote, COVID's effect on Black students, economic mobility, culture, and so much more. It's about to be lit, you already know. I'm your host and moderator, Claudianne Francis from Binghamton University. Thank you all for coming to Black College America and Coronavirus, the live digital conference for Black students and recent graduates across all the universities. Your presence is valued. I'll be keeping an eye on all of your comments and questions throughout. We cannot see you on video, but we can see your energy. So I want you all to take a moment and rep your school name and graduating class in the comments below, and I'll be giving some shout outs. We have the University of Evansville, class of 24, Howard University, class of 22, the School of Art Institute at Chicago. Hey, Chicago, wow. Princeton, Binghamton class of 22. Who else? Howard U, 21. Northwestern, class of 19. Okay, heard you. Howard University, 23. Let's keep this coming. Still in high school, class of 23, Greenville. Wow, looks like we have a full house. Our first opening speaker is a philanthropist and is the current reigning Miss New York USA 2019. After a year of 3 Black pageant title holders holding all major pageant titles, the speaker is ready to compete strongly at Miss USA. Please help me welcome the amazing Miss New York USA 2019, Andrea Gabal.
Hi, everybody. Am I on? Can you guys hear me? Let me know in the comments if you can hear me and see me. Okay, perfect. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Like Claudia said, my name is Andrea Gabal. I am a writer, speaker, philanthropist, and the reigning Miss New York USA. I am so thrilled to have the opportunity to address you all today. Before I get into some of the more serious and pressing matters, I want to congratulate the class of 2020 on graduating. We're all so incredibly proud of each and every one of you. With all of the virtual celebrations and commencement speeches, including one from Queen Beyonce and Barack Obama, this is truly going to be a milestone that none of you will ever forget. But sorry for my dog, by the way. But on the contrary, I can only imagine the hurt, confusion, and frustration you all must be grappling with right now. I think we can all share the feeling that back on January 1st, 2020, none of us could have foreseen what was about to happen in our country. So many of us were excited for a hot girl summer and making 2020 our year. And it's crazy to think that at the end of this month, we're going to reach the halfway mark to the year, and it's been nothing like how we imagined it. But I think when we look back at 2020, it's going to be seen as a year of such an important pivotal time in history. The COVID pandemic has brought the issues of inequalities in our country to such a stark focus. Despite the miracles of modern medicine and improved health in general, the coronavirus has been killing a disproportionate number of Black people in this country since March. The truth is, though, we have seen this coming. The barriers and the biases that laid the groundwork for Black people to be potentially hit harder in this crisis has been in place for decades. The disparities that have plagued our country all comes down to the fundamental inequality that is once again causing such pain and causing innocent people to lose their lives. And the deeply rooted racism in this country enables challenges and stigmas that prevent advancement simply based on the color of our skin, regardless of our ability, regardless of our aptitude, our educational attainment, our work ethic, or any other measure of our future potential. And as a result of this happening for hundreds of years, we now have this nationwide outrage and protest to end police brutality against Black people with the Black Lives Matter movement. We're also having to demand an end to the inequality of opportunity and the tragic waste of talent and capital that results from systemic racism. Black Lives Matter is about justice. It's about equality and putting an end to police brutality that systematically fails to be held accountable, as well as other countless other injustices that Black people face on a day-to-day basis. You know, we still have a long way to go, but we are certainly making progress. We are seeing brands and corporations taking accountability and having a plan for action. We are seeing people that haven't had to experience this waking up and become an ally, because this is something that affects everyone. because it robs our entire nation of realizing the full potential of each human being. But oh my God, what a time it is to know that instead of having to squash these emotions that we have been struggling with for so long, we're able to voice our concerns and support one another. There's such a big movement happening, and there's such a change in the air, and I really hope you all feel how wonderful and empowering it is to be a part of it. And as you all fight for justice, know that no matter what anyone says, this country is our country. Our ancestors sacrificed their lives to build this country. Their blood, sweat, and tears fertilize the rich soil upon which much of this country's wealth and standing in the world is built. So we have no choice but to fight for it. We owe it to those people who came before us and protested and fought and died to make this country just a little bit better for those who come after them. So don't give up. Come at this with the ferocity I know you all have inside of you, because it's going to depend on people like you and me to go out there and rewrite what's possible. Know that we need your brilliance. We need your voice. We need your action. We need you to fully show up confidently as you are everywhere you go, in all spaces. And we need you to show up to the polls this November. Because sometimes in order for us to change the laws so they better represent us, we have to change the people who implement those laws. And the time is now, because you matter. Your life matters, your dreams and aspirations matter. And when you exist in spaces that were not meant for you to thrive, remember that sometimes just being you is not only more than enough, but it's actually the revolution. So as we kickstart this incredible conference, be empowered enough to know and have an honest and raw conversations with one another. Support and love one another, because this is the beginning of us changing the course of history. And every single one of you enclose such power inside, and the world is waiting. So thank you all so much. I think this is such an incredible platform that Claudiane, you and your friends have done. And I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts, your feelings, and your plan to action.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for your time. Powerful as always. There is definitely such a push for change right now, and we have a long way to go. Very well said. Our last opening speaker is a rising junior at Howard University and was crowned the first Black Miss Texas Teen USA in 2019. She spent her time actively working on the front lines of the movement by serving as a voting squad captain of When We All Vote. She continues to advocate for increased vote registration amongst youth. Please help me welcome Miss Texas Teen USA 2019, Kennedy Edwards.
Hello, I hope everyone can hear me. If you can let me know in the comments if you can hear me, that would be so great. Yes, okay. All right, everyone, hello. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so honored to be an opening speaker for this incredible event. You all have a tight-packed informational conference ahead of you with the most knowledgeable and inspiring panelists. But before we can jump into everything, I would like to congratulate all of the 2020 graduates we have on our conference call. While your graduations may not have been everything that you imagined them to be, I would like to remind you that completing a degree or receiving a diploma is so much more than the moment or manner in which you receive it. It's about the time and the effort that you put forth over the years, and this evening we celebrate you. To my high school graduates, you've made it. Looking back at my time in high school, I am currently so different from the girl I was then. I attended high school in a small town right outside of Houston, Texas, and didn't know much of the world beyond that. And then 3 months later, I moved halfway across the country to attend a university where I also knew no one. So as you can imagine, I was extremely culture shocked, nervous, and out of my comfort zone when I first entered college. But I quickly came to understand that being out of your comfort zone or having a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. Being out of my comfort zone and having this new perspective is what has permitted me to grow into the woman I am today. And I'm telling you this because this is the same opportunity to mature and find your true self. That is the only thing that is ahead of you as new graduates. To my college graduates, I'm sorry, as a rising junior, the only graduations I've ever had were kindergarten and high school, so I will refrain from speaking knowledge on what the actual adult world looks like. However, I would like to share with you all a quote by author Neil Gaiman. Gaiman states that, "Now go and make interesting mistakes. Make amazing mistakes. Make glorious, fantastic mistakes. Break rules. Leave the world more interesting for you being here." You know, this is what I think being successful or achieving success is about. It requires you to continuously take risks, to make grand, amazing mistakes, and to learn from them. So I encourage you to consider adopting that mindset, to take those risks, because you are so much capable of things greater than what you can even imagine. Speaking of our capabilities, I know personally it is very easy to feel powerless in these times. With the overwhelming spread of COVID-19 and the nationwide fight for racial justice, we have seen so many people from our communities die at both the hands of a virus and law enforcement. It is discouraging and maddening, but know that even in these times, we have power. We have the power to educate ourselves about the spread of coronavirus and to take the precautions necessary to protect ourselves, to protect our loved ones, and to flatten the curve in the process. We have the power to demand justice for those who have fallen victim to police brutality, to call for the reformation or the dismantling of a criminal justice system that has never achieved justice for us, and to spread awareness about the realities of systemic racism. We have the power to determine what our country looks like 10, 20, 30 years from now, because there is power in youth advocacy and in political activity. You know, we hear all the time that we are the leaders of the future. And I think for maybe the first time ever, we need to accept and adopt that. We should own that. We should take the first steps to lead our future by registering to vote, by voting in all elections, whether they be local, national, or statewide elections, by fighting against and speaking out about voter suppression, and finally by being alert, not when things are bad, or only when things are bad, but continuously, because that is how we truly enact change and determine what our futures will look like. And ultimately, that's what we're here for today. We're here today to address an issue that has the power to destroy us. And we're here to determine how we can efficiently make decisions that will allow us to prevail in these moments. Today, we will discuss the matter in which COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting minority communities and come up with real-life solutions for how Black college students may now move forward politically, economically, and personally during this pandemic. With that being said, I hope you all are super excited for these upcoming panels and the discussions that are to be had on each of them. I know I am. So without further ado, let's get started.
Thank you so much, Kennedy. I hope you all were inspired. I know I was. With that said, it's time to kick off our first panel. We're introducing 4 stellar Black leaders in politics. The first was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve on the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans. Her first job out of college was the president of the United States Student Association. Please join me in welcoming the current National Director of NAACP's Youth in College Division, Ms. Tiffany Lofton.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. You look great. It's good to see everyone.
Thank you. Next up serves as a member of the Binghamton City Council representing District 3. She is passionate about health promotion and education in underserved communities. She's a faculty member at Binghamton University. She is none other than Dr. Angela Riley.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Following Dr. Riley is the 2017 recipient of the Dr. Hazel N. Dukes Distinguished Leadership Award. She serves as the first vice president of the NAACP's New York State Conference Youth and College Division and she's also a rep for Region 2 of the NAACP. She is Raven Waters.
Can you see me? Okay. Hello.
Good. Hi, Raven.
Hi.
And last but certainly not least is Kennedy Edwards.
All right, can everyone see me and hear me?
Can.
Okay, great.
Thank you all so much for being a part of this conference, especially during these times. I mean, it's like we went from being pandemic experts to experts on how to make bread at home to civil rights experts. We have not gotten a break all year, but we all know it's so imperative now more than ever to amplify our own voices and hold ourselves accountable to lifting up our own community. So how are you all doing during these times, especially being such influential leaders in a divided time?
I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, I'll go first. I'm right there with you guys. We transitioned to a fully online curriculum, which means we had to be there with our students and go beyond just being the normal faculty members or community members and looking at the entire need of the student. And typically my students were going through more because now they were back in the home, required to work, required to be a part of that normal life that didn't typically include classwork. And so it was important for me, as one of the only faculty members of color, to reach out and make sure my students were okay, because we were dying in addition to continuing to test or provide exams. And so I think that was critically important. As a city council member, we were out trying to gather data and make sure the COVID money was released or is released to assist, as well as supporting the needs of our local food pantries, because people need to eat. They need toilet paper. Things were happening. And so it was very important to be boots on the ground and ready to go.
What about you, Raven?
So I'm a student right now, so I also had to deal with the switch over to virtual, which was kind of crazy. And then I was also working full time, so it was a lot. And then the month of May came, and that's when all these different issues with cops killing our people, or just regular everyday citizens killing our people, like Ahmaud Arbery came in. And I think all of us as a Black community were very affected heavily by that. And it was just a lot. It makes you numb sometimes, but then you trying to fight the numbness because it's just like it's been going on for so many years, where it's just like you're kind of like stuck. So I think with the virus, I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise for some things. Like right now, can you imagine being every day going to work and having to deal with listening to Black people being killed constantly, like back to back to back cases just popping up and becoming public, and having to deal with stress, and also the stress of, I don't know if I walk out my door, I'm going to make it back home. I think that is just a lot. So I think personally, I'm doing fine. However, like, I'm really confused on, how do we move forward? Where should I go first? Where should I help out first? So I think this panel and this conference is amazing because it brings us all together and bring our different perspectives, where I may have some ideas that I bring to the table and someone else may bring some other ideas. So I think it's great that we have this panel and that you and the Binghamton chapter and the MRC brought this together, because we definitely need this to help us to move forward. And I'm just glad to be here and be on a panel with these other lovely ladies.
And we're glad to have you too. What about you, Ms. Lofton?
I want to echo the sentiments of Raven, who I know very well. Listen, we have watched in the last 109 days, I don't know about y'all, but I've been counting. In the last 109 days, when the world has pivoted to a shutdown, our language has shifted from social distancing to physical distancing, because there's nothing anti-social about what we're doing. folks have been really creative, really resilient, very inspiring when we think about ways to convene and continue to have discussions that are necessary for young Black people in this moment. And this is a prime example of what that looks like, right? Folks didn't know really in the beginning how to pivot. And so my work at the NAACP as a national director for all the Youth and College Division members was to make sure that in the plans that we had for 2020 last year, when we knew we had to focus on elections and the general elections, we had to focus on turning out the vote, filling out the census, none of those things disappeared, but our efforts and our strategy to that had to change. And so I've had to make sure that my team at the NAACP supports our members from across the country. We can come up with creative ways of how to engage our communities and keep our leaders involved. This is a prime example of that. And I also want to shout out Black women who do it the best, in my personal opinion. But to your question about like how I'm feeling, you know, I want us to be very mindful that sometimes leaders, which all of us are, say that we're okay and don't realize that we're not doing okay. Sometimes our reaction to moments like this, like Raven said, is to be really numb, and then to realize that through the numbness, we're not taking care of ourselves. So to be honest with you, as someone who lives by herself and has, like I said, done 109 days, I've had to pick up and remind myself of the hobbies and the things that make me feel good throughout this moment, and then stay focused on doing that. Because although I'm blessed to still have a job, we're still working under a crisis. So I still run 6 miles a week. I'm still reading a book every week. I'm still watching my favorite shows. I'm cooking in the kitchen way more than I ever had because I'm so used to traveling so much. I'm checking on people, and then I'm reminding myself to be okay with checking on me, right? So I think right now I'm okay. What I'm most concerned about is the second wave of COVID-19 that a lot of us are not really prepared for, seeing how we have no leadership in government that knows what they're doing, and secondarily, don't have any sort of remedies or vaccines that are going to support us through this moment. On Friday, Johns Hopkins University reported that we saw the highest number of cases since we've shut down. It was at 40,000 people who were infected, right, or who have now been tested and are infected. And so what I'm worried about is this second wave that we're going to see in lockdown, and how that might impact not just our families and our health, but also the general election that's coming up in less than 150 days on November 3rd, right? And so that's where I'm most concerned about, and I do get anxiety thinking about it. But as Kennedy said earlier, these are the leaders of today and the future, and I'm confident in the resilience, the strength, the creativity, and the love of Black people to make sure we get all the things we need to get done this year.
Yeah, and you know, the second wave is coming up, and it seems as if when white America has a cold, Black America has pneumonia. And there are some very striking stats regarding the deaths of Black Americans from COVID. According to the APM Research Lab, the mortality rate of Black Americans from COVID is 2.3 times higher than Asian and Latinos, and then 2.6 times higher than white Americans. So what can you make from these numbers, and touch upon why we are the most affected?
I'll go ahead. Okay. I think obviously it goes down, and back to what Andrew was saying in her opening speech, just like the access to healthcare and what that has to do with the pre-existing conditions that most Black people have, and then our own like stigmas about going to the doctor and being afraid of that. When I do go to the doctor, are my symptoms, are my feelings going to be considered and taken into action at the same rate as that of a white person or that of a Hispanic person? And often that is not the case. I mean, we see that all the time. Like Black women go into labor and they sit here and they're complaining about pains, and they're complaining that they think something is wrong with their child, and then all of their complaints are just completely disregarded. And you see the same thing without any other health condition that we go through. So I think it's a combination of those things. You have so many poor and disenfranchised Black people who can't go and get tested because they're working 24/7, or because there isn't a testing site close to them, or because they can't afford to get tested. And then you have those who, when they do go to the hospital, they're completely disregarded. So it's the systemic racism within the medical community that needs to be addressed, and it's going to take a lot to break that down, whether that be with coronavirus or with the second wave or with whatever next is going to hit us.
Yeah, what's your response to that, Dr. Riley?
Sorry about that. I second or I echo what Ms. Edwards has said. Remember, African Americans, because of the systemic racism that we have faced for over 400 years, have led us not only to have barriers in the healthcare system, but other social determinants of health have been limited, right? We don't have access to quality, fresh food. We are working jobs where we don't have the vacation or the time afforded to us to take care of what we need to maintain our health. We take care of multiple family members. There's so many layers to this, in addition to the access. So not only are we in the front line, subjected to the illness, but then once we have the symptoms, we will do a cost-benefit analysis. Can I make it and still work to provide for my family, compared to stopping and taking care of myself? And as we all know, we as African American women try to wear the superhero, superwoman, carry that persona, as Ms. Lofton mentioned earlier, and we will forego our own care to take care of everyone else. And that's why we see what we see, compounded with this rumor or this belief that COVID isn't real, and I think we're seeing that as, unfortunately, we lose more people as it comes closer to us in terms of proximity. I lost 3 parents of my close friends during this COVID phase, and it's a wake-up call when I'm talking to colleagues who don't know anyone. So it's a difference, and once you know better, you do better, in spite of. And so we have to then support our brothers and sisters, make sure we, again, advocate for those testing centers, encourage testing. I know there was a speech by your leader, I'm saying your leader, that if we stop testing, we won't have the numbers. And that doesn't make sense from a data, not from a health perspective. It doesn't make sense. So we have to encourage our colleagues, our friends, our loved ones to go out and get tested if they are at risk. Those of us that were at the Black Lives Matter protests, we were in close proximity because we had a reason to advocate. So go get tested to make sure, again, you haven't contracted the virus and you're not spreading the virus. Wear the mask. We have cute masks. If you want to be cute, get a cute mask. Change mask. Clothes. Put on the mask. I don't care. The literature has shown, they will have all these theories that kind of try to dispel what the data says, but we are evidence-based people. Medicine, the practice of healthcare is evidence-based. And we look at that data, and if it will help you, you wear it. Okay, you stop, you do what you need to do. So again, let's encourage our colleagues and friends. Let's continue to fight the systemic barriers that prevent us from doing what we need to do, and make sure you register to vote so we can change your leader, and get some people that sound like us, some people that think about us, that prioritize us when the decisions are being made.
That's a really good point. And
No, I love the way Dr. Riley just summed that up, because she did not say, and I don't know if it was intentional, but she did not have to say looks like us, because a lot of folks think that when we vote for people who look like us, that that's the end all be all. You didn't even say that. You said people who think like us, who value us, who put us first, and that's the most important thing. Absolutely.
And that's how they trick us.
Yes,
I agree.
Hello, Binghamton. Let's look at what's happening in our city right now, those of you that are here. There are people that look like us, right? All skin folk and kin folk. And they will wear the clothing and will rob you blind. So just be careful and pay attention. Hear what they're saying. It's time for some change.
And I think it's really important to mention that once people saw the Black community was affected so much by COVID, some individuals in response just checked out, going back straight to work, no longer distancing, and just disregarding us as a community. So How do you think we can get people to have a sense of empathy during these times, even if they think they're less impacted?
Were you going to answer, Raven?
I was just thinking about my answer because just because we all went virtual, I'm just thinking about like the different posts I see on Instagram from my non-Black friends. And they've been posting about like how you need to be an ally, but they didn't just like post for the one day. They've been like, well, a few of them, I'm not going to lie. I don't know if anybody else is doing this, but like if I see an old friend and they're not Black, I don't know, that's just my new thing. I like check their page to see if they did like a Black Lives Matter post and see like where their mind's at. Cause it's like, you can't miss Black Lives Matter. It's everywhere. It's on the news. It's on Instagram. Like it's going to be on your feed. So I'm just thinking about like, who's showing empathy and who's just like, all right, I'm just going to post it on my page and just for that one day and like look like I'm in solidarity, but like it doesn't affect me, so I really don't care. I may have one of those one or two distant Black friends, but I don't talk to them often, but I'll support them from afar. So I think it's really, we can't make them feel empathy. They have to feel that themselves, honestly. That's their character. And, you know, just like generationally, we've been past I don't want to say the burden, but like it has been a burden of systematic racism that we've been, you know, unfortunately passed on because we fight, but still they find other loops and other ways to come back at us. The what do you call it? White privilege has just been passed down to people, and they just, you know, all right, well, you know, I'm just gonna go into this, and they don't realize like how to even be empathetic because they just grew up in that. So they have to teach and they would have to learn themselves. We can't make them empathetic. That just comes from their natural character and from their personality. You can't change a person that doesn't want to be changed, honestly. But I do love the I don't know, the thought of, you know, wanting to make people empathetic, but they would have to want to become empathetic themselves, honestly.
No, I think Raven covered it. I mean, I think that empathy is a losing strategy. If that was the case, we would have seen the end to slavery, the end of the new Jim Crow, the end of mass incarceration, the end of disparities. When we talk about healthcare, like Dr. Riley mentioned, the end of defunding of public schools. Empathy doesn't get to anybody for a winning strategy. I've never seen it work to create real strong change, like Raven said. But I do think that there's something missing in the conversation around what's happening, like you mentioned, with wearing the mask and keeping people safe, which is the heightened criminalization of Black and brown people during this pandemic versus white folks. And I have seen both in person and online, and I'm sure we all have, an example of someone who feels a white person who feels super offended because, you know, they have to wear a mask when they have to go into the grocery store. They feel super offended because they have to wear a mask and they don't want to, you know, or they don't want their kids to wear the mask. Some people go even as far to make up lies and rumors to say that their breathing capacity has changed because they have to wear a mask, which is not true. And then you see folks who are either not able to get proper PPE gear, not able to get a mask that is sufficient, or not people who are not able to get masks enough for their families, et cetera, and they are being instead criminalized. I just saw a video of a young man, and right before I got on this panel, of a young man being harassed. He was at a beauty supply store running an errand for his mother, and he did not have a mask on. Nobody asked him to leave, but the police literally grabbed him and violently threw him to the ground. And so I just think that conversation needs to be had. And the only way that we solve that is not through empathy, but through policy change. It is through elected officials and police chiefs and our healthcare experts and, you know, y'all's president, not mine, like Dr. Riley said, but elected officials and Congress members who do not name first and also prioritize the policies that get in place, when we talk about this. You know, there are some elected officials who have made it optional to wear the mask, and there are other states that have made it mandatory. There are some states who have opened too early and they got a problem, and there are some states who are trying to figure out how to get more testing. And so I think that, you know, with your conversation on empathy, that's not the strategy we should be looking at. The strategy we should be looking at is Black people have always and will always save themselves. Let's wear masks. Let's wash our hands. Let's do what we can do so we can keep our own families safe. And secondarily, how do we make sure we're not criminalized in that? And that comes through policy change and elections, like y'all have mentioned.
Yes, and Raven, you mentioned social media, and some people would post a Black square and think that that's enough, or think that that is sufficient to really support our community. So what's your response to those who say that they're allies, but the most they do is go to Instagram and repost something?
I think that you can't be an ally unless you walk alongside of me. If you're not walking alongside of me and trying to help me to move in the next direction, you're not an ally. If you just pat me on my shoulder and then walk away, you're not my ally. You're just somebody encouraging me, okay, good job, but I'm not going to help you. So I definitely think that we should talk to other people. However, it's not our job to educate people. And I think Amanda Seales, even though she has some profanity in it, she did have a video where she did mention that it's not my job as a Black person to educate you on what the system is doing to Black people. Just as a person, you should know what's going on in your country and know what different communities are being affected by these different things. It's not like you're blind. It's not like you're deaf. It's on the news. It's in articles, both online and in papers. So it's pretty much about if you're coming out and doing something about it, not just sitting there and walking past it and just staring at it like it's, oh, I'm just going to watch this person get arrested by the cops, but I see that he is brutally being beat up for no reason. You have to put yourself in those shoes and say, hey, would I want that to happen to me? Then you would, okay, hey, maybe you should stop. That's an ally, and not just walking past and just seeing something happen and just saying, oh, well, glad it's not me. You know, my people don't do that. My people, you don't even know what that person is doing, you know, and you can't judge people by just stereotypes. So it's just getting to know people, getting to have a conversation with them, but it's not about the person as being oppressed starting the conversation. Is the oppressors or the other people that have to start the conversation and want to be open to learn and be educated about that situation. I also want to add on to what Dr. Riley and Tiffany said about voting. Education about the vote. It's not about just going out to vote. You need to know who your candidates are, and that's very important, because just going out to the ballot, like, I'm not even going to lie. I was voting this week in New York, and I saw this gentleman, and he asked for help. And one of the voter operators, or, you know, voting rights operator, she, election ballot operator, I don't know. I'm coming up with names now. She came up and she said, oh, your ballot is blank. And that kind of hit me differently, that he didn't know who to vote for. He just didn't vote on one of his ballots. And I'm like, wow, like, these people really need to be educated, because just going out to the polls and just circling any name is not going to help you. It's especially not sending in a blank ballot, but I was here, I just didn't vote. It's like handing in a blank test. You're there and your name is written on the paper, but if you don't fill in a dot, you're not being counted. So I think that's definitely something we have to look into, with educating people about their vote, and just going out and looking on websites to see who's on your ballot before you go out. And it's just all about education. Like, different issues may pop up, but it all comes down to education. And in and out of the schools, we all have to educate ourselves on different topics.
Right. Kennedy?
I also just wanted to add on to the initial question about allyship and what that looks like on social media. So from what I've seen is that you have people who will do performative activism, people who are actually trying to be activists, and then you have people who just don't care. And so I think for me, when this all started, I was trying to get those who weren't who didn't have a stance, who were not going to take a stance and felt like this issue did not apply to them at all, and trying to get them to see why that was wrong and why taking a stance is a problem, or not taking a stance is a problem, and trying to, have them see my experience and, like we were saying before, empathize with that. And that is a losing goal. Like, that will never happen, no matter what I do, what I say. If I have them walk up and down in my heels, like, that's never going to happen. And so what I realized is how you get people to be allies, or how you use your allyship in the right way, is by utilizing your privilege. And so that's what I've had to tell my non-Black friends. Like, yeah, you can post. Yeah, you can sit here and you can call. Yeah, you can, retweet things on Twitter and, sign petitions and make donations, which are all great things. These are things that I'm doing and my other Black friends are doing. But at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to use your privilege in times where you see someone who is struggling with systematic racism. It's your job to use your privilege to have your conversations with your family and your friends who also share these racist ideals. It's your responsibility to speak up when you see things that aren't right. And so I think that goes for, race relations and racism, but it also goes with the pandemic, and just making sure that you're having conversations with people and sharing information. I know someone told me just like a week ago, they were like, all I can do is give you the information. I can educate you. I can tell you what's going on, why you should be doing this, and that. And then you make that decision. And you have to make that decision knowing that you were educated about what the risk and the benefits were. And so my mom always tells me that, like, God only protects fools and babies. And you cannot be a fool if you knew the risk. And so that goes with wearing a mask. Like, if you know that by not wearing a mask that you are likely to transmit coronavirus to someone else, and you still choose to not wear that mask, then you're not a fool. If you know that by going out all the time, and that by eating out in restaurants every single day, and that by hanging out with your friends and families, that you are very likely to contract the virus and give it to other people, even if you don't show any symptoms, then you are not a fool. You are choosing to do so. And so I think by educating people and by utilizing your privilege, that's the only way that we can really, like, take a stance for these things as non-Black people.
So we all know that Twitter has played a role in popularizing the news we see, and this unknown history of African Americans in this country that many of us didn't learn in school, and specifically referring to the maximization of the Tuskegee experiments, whereas Black people were injected with syphilis, thinking that they were given a vaccine, and that could and has in some way affected potential voting. So give us some historical background on that, and what's true, what's false, and how could that affect future voters?
You're gonna go, Dr. Riley? You sure? You might say something different than me. I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to at least acknowledge or say, since we've spoken a lot about advocacy, that there is a moment right now where folks' president has decided and has said publicly two things. One, that the less you test folks, the better our country will be, which is problematic, because the less you test folks, then the less access to healthcare, the less access to fixing the problem we actually have. And for his sake, the less amount of people will be reported who have coronavirus, which will make him look good as a president. So there's a bunch of things wrong with that. But the second thing that's really important is his strategic, right? It's all intentional. I like how Kennedy, I'm taking what your mom said, I just wrote it down, that if you don't know, then you're a fool. I think this is really good. Then he, at 45, he should not be named, in the spirit of Harry Potter, he who should not be named, has definitely done what fools can't do, right? he has intentionally defunded state elections. He has intentionally spoken out about not funding the U.S. Postal Service. He has intentionally funded corporations and not people. He has intentionally said that if you have a problem with coronavirus in your state, then that is your problem. And unless you bow down on your knees to thank the federal government and the White House, it is not our responsibility to help you, right? We've seen this narrative and politicking that is taking place that has that has been at the cost of people's lives, not sacrifice, the cost of people's lives. So when we talk about advocacy and fixing the facts of what's happening right now, it is everyone's responsibility who is watching and tuning in, and folks who will see this panel later, to make sure that they are speaking to their elected officials and asking them to continue to fund the elections. I said this earlier about the second wave. When we talk about the second wave and November 3rd being a thing, I'm not saying I'm a conspiracy theorist, because that's all mumbo jumbo. But we do have to think strategically and see the forest for the trees. And what is about to happen is we are about to ask folks to go back inside on lockdown. And we have to make sure the NAACP National worked with the Center for American Progress on a report. They did a study on Black people in this country and what their voting patterns are. Most Black people, according to our study, still don't trust voting by mail. They think it's going to get lost somewhere. They don't think it's actually going to get to where it's supposed to go. We saw what happened in Georgia when people registered to vote and they got purged because their names were spelled differently. There are all kinds of things disenfranchise and suppress the vote. But people who want to advocate for things, there's a list of them that I'm going to give hopefully later, but one of them is to make sure that you are asking the federal government and your elected officials to fund elections. Right now, there was a letter written by Beyonce and by Tina Knowles Lawson and by Kelly Rowland and Lala Anthony and all these incredible mothers, Lucy McBath, mothers of the movement, Sabrina Fulton, etc., asking the federal government to give $2.3 billion to elections this year so that people are able to have all of the options to vote, not just voting in person if they want to, but also to vote by mail, to make sure that they can register online. There are still states that do not allow you to register online just to vote. And so we need to make sure that things are accessible so that folks have the right to register online, et cetera. That is one of the things that we need to do advocacy-wise to make sure that when November rolls around, all of us can cast our vote to do what we need to do. And you know what I mean by that.
Yes. Raven and Kennedy, as the students on this panel, you are both very aware of the importance of youth involvement in politics, but what does this mean for students who filled out their absentee ballots with their school address because they assume that they would be still on campus? How do students go about changing their address for ballot applications?
Okay, I can go ahead and speak on that. Okay, so it really depends on what state you live in, but going about that, there are many resources online to figure out how you can do that and how you can change your address. I would say first and foremost, you can go to the When We All Vote website and check that out. There are a lot of different resources on that website that can explain if you still want to get an absentee ballot, because I know some schools are opening up in the fall. If you plan on being on campus, you can go ahead and do that. Like Ms. Tiffany just put in the comments, you can go to vote.org. That is also a great resource for this issue. And so I think it goes beyond that, because some students are going to be on campus in the fall, whether that is something that we agree is a good idea or not. There are some people who are going to be on campus in the fall. There are students who are going to be at home in the fall. And there are students who, even though they're going to be at home, still don't want to go in to vote, and students who want to change their campus or want to change their address from their state address to wherever they're going to school to vote in that area. So I think resources like these are very good in doing either of these things. And I don't think a lot of people know that they're available. So you can go to any of these websites. There's links and information and forms that you can fill out and mail in, or even things that you can submit online to get these changes done.
Good. I hope you guys are taking notes. Screenshot this. It's really important information, you guys. All right. The Black vote. Breaking down some myths, realities, the power of the Black vote. We've seen so many household names advocate in the 2016 election, and still it went the other way around. We didn't want it to go. So We're approaching primaries again. As Black students, what power do we have on the polls, and how effective is the Black vote as a unit?
I'll go ahead and go. Again, I want to go back to what was said previously. You all, the people in this, on the panel, the people that are participating, you all are not my generation. You are not your grandmother's generation. And I've seen a shirt. Do not come at me because I'm not a something, these hands. So you need to use the power that you have, the voice that you have to advocate for the way you see fit. So your advocacy is not my advocacy. So we have to embrace, because right now we're in a heated moment, right? Everybody's engaged. They want to do something. And I will even say some of our non-Black friends and colleagues, they want to do something, but they don't know how. So I'm not for creating the reading list and then doing a platform presentation to educate. However, I will direct. I will also provide consult if you really want that. So I encourage you guys to do that as well, because they're afraid. They don't know. And again, just like we have things motivating us, they have things and families that may be drawing them away from what they truly feel. So bring them in, bring them to the table, because you can use them and make that circle wider. I also wanted to just talk about, don't forget, policy and legislation does not only occur on November 3rd or during primaries. Right now in your cities, either where your college or university is, or even at home, we are now implementing legislation to start addressing policing. And this is when we need that voice. This is when we need our students to roll in. If it's on Zoom, sign up for the comment period. If it's in person, put on the mask and come and tell your story. Again, yes, we need you to vote. Yes, we need you to register. And also, another way, pick up the phone, email your local board of elections. Change.org is good. Some of these websites are good, but when you go to the source that's closest to where the vote is counted, you know that you're doing it accurately. You also write down a name so that you can hold them accountable. You say, Matt, I talked to you on June 23rd. I did not get my ballot. Where is it, Matt? Because you wrote Matt's name down, okay? It's about accountability. Finally, again, bring everybody to the table. It's our table, right? We need voices. It's going to be hard. I believe that we need to better focus our local budget to support other agencies that meet the needs of the community. And you know what that word is. Some of us are no longer using the word, but you know what that means. And in order to do that, I have to educate. I do. I have to put on the hat and educate some people that don't understand what we need because they live in this bubble. But in order to be effective, I have to bust the bubble and give them the tools to come on over to the other side. What makes them hear what I'm saying is when I have 30 minutes of comment period from voters in the district, voters in the city. So again, yes, we need a mass turnout at the election, but we need you in everyday governance. We need your voice. And say politics is not your thing. Say you're good at making flyers. Make a flyer. Say you're good at making a TikTok. TikTok your way to advocate change. Okay? Do that. Everybody's not meant to run or be at the front. However, we all have a role in this social justice movement. And like I said, my advocacy is not your advocacy. I'm so proud of the students. I'm so proud of you guys. Do it. Do it for us. Because we're tired. But we can't be tired. So do it and let's get the job done.
Yeah, and one of the most important takeaways, I love that, Dr. Riley, for this event is the power we have as students, as millennials and Gen Zers, to understand these issues and to use our knowledge to make educated action steps toward a more equitable future. And it's important to see young activists and organizing change makers stepping up and making an impact. So I want to gear this over to Kennedy and Raven. How can young people get more involved in politics even before they're of age to vote?
What was that last part you said? Before they
are of age to vote, before 18. Mm-hmm.
I think that just has to do with them. You have to be educated about what the issues are. You have to form your own political beliefs about what these issues are. You can still, like we were doing before when it comes to Black Lives Matter, signing petitions. You can email your leading officials and do all these things that are open to anyone, no matter how old you are. But I think the biggest thing is figuring out where you stand. And I think a lot of young people are so quick to just take on the political beliefs of their parents and run with that. And that's not necessarily what each of us need to do. So, I mean, as a political science major, I kind of had this in my head already. I was like, I don't care what my parents think. Like, I'm going to figure out where I stand on these issues, what I want to do about these issues, and how I can make an impact. So by figuring those things out at a young age, when it comes time to vote, you don't have to sit there and be like, okay, this person is running for this, but I don't really know what I think about where they stand. You can listen to their speeches, listen to their talks, and watch what they're doing in their communities and be like, I like this, 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 and that. I think this person will help me in this, and that way. And you can make an informed decision then on whether to support that person, whether to support that legislation, that policy. And it takes away all the stress of finding yourself politically that a lot of young adults have to do. So I think by staying informed, watching the news, diversifying your news sources, and just being aware, becoming an active voter at the age of 18 is a piece of cake, because you already have this, what is the word I'm looking for? You already have this, you're used to doing this. Yeah, mm-hmm. You're used to doing this already because you've already been engaged from the time you're 16, 17 years old.
Yeah. Raven?
Well, there's no lie that Black women have to vote.
Oh, Raven, we can't hear you. Raven, maybe type it and then I'll just say it.
While Raven is typing, can I just add another thing?
Yes.
Here in town, again, the high school students have taken as their own personal charge this power to, and I'm going to mess it up, it's to snap what's going on and then cause this trickle effect, either to be at a movement, to participate in a march, to act in a rally. Do not short sell the youth, the youth. I mean, my 15-year-old told me because she got an invitation to the march, I wasn't invited. It was just for her colleagues. And I said, oh, well, what did you get? But they had re-snapped it over and over and over. And that rally was the biggest rally they'd seen in this city. So start again, bring everybody to the table. I'm not gonna snap. They will snap. You all will snap. And look at what happened with Trump. They snapped or said a message was sent out, register and take over the tickets, right? And look what happened. So everyone can have a part in the movement, even the babies. So don't shortchange anyone. Invite everyone to the table.
I was going to say also a lot of young people have really big social media followings. And that's how that happens, is that I can be 16 years old with 100,000 followers on Instagram. And all I have to do is post one time saying Black Lives Matter. And I have influenced 100,000 people. And so I think that utilizing your platform is the number one thing we as young people can do. I mean, I don't know how this is going to happen or when this is going to happen, but we are going to see a great shift in our government when it comes to like presenting information and influencing and campaigning. And it's going to be through social media. So by getting ahead and an understanding of how you can do that and what manner you will take to do so, I think that's the best thing you can do as a young person. That's what I do with my social media following. I try to spread as much as I can about the things that I'm passionate about and just, like I said before, provide that education and that my followers can make an informed decision on whether they take that stance or they don't. Also, by providing information about what's going on, movements, marches, petitions, that's how things are spread.
So I want to circle back to medical care during these times, specifically to people of color. Our doctors and nurses are on the front lines when the rest of us have the privilege to stay home. However, we have instances of, in the words of Harry Washington, medical apartheid, the experimentation of Black Americans in hospitals. Racial bias in healthcare is real, and it's being illuminated during these times. So what is being done politically to tackle this issue, and what can we do as students as a response?
What is being done politically? Absolutely. No, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say what I wanted to say. There's much work to be done. And don't forget your pharmacists are at the front line as well. Okay. But yes, again, what was done because of the outcry was to refocus funding to support PPE. That was not enough, right? We still had the non-believers. So again, policy and legislation are driven by the voices of the people. And you will not pass bills if people perceive a charge, a mission, an idea to have no backing. The voice and the power is in the people. So again, we want mass changes. We have to know about it, advocate for it, and then change policy. And that's when we will see movement.
Thank you all so much for your brilliant insights. I want to segue into questions from the audience. So you have about 5 minutes to ask away, and anything you want answered, I'll just read them out to you.
And while we wait for questions, can I just also shout out the NAACP who's putting this event on as well? You all are some incredible folks. I want to name that because Kennedy spoke earlier about ways that people can get involved. I mean, I personally don't have 100,000 followers, but no matter what your influence is, we all have a responsibility socially to make sure that our networks of people that we do have influence with are used to our advantage to make sure that we share the most important information, but also that we fact-checked all of our information as well. I see people sharing and reposting Black Lives Matter rallies that actually aren't put on by Black Lives Matter organizations. I see people posting and sharing articles that are from like fake media sources and don't double check the facts of the information that we're sharing. So as we talk about policy and elected officials, social media also allows us to hold people accountable and double check our facts.
I don't know if Kenny wants to go first or not.
Can you? And to fact check our things. And so most importantly, one of the things that everyone needs to do, whether you are a protester, an activist, an organizer, a leader, an influencer, is to make sure that you belong to a political home. I belong to a church home. because that's where I go to make sure that my faith and my community and my folks keep me in prayer and make sure that I am good. We need to have political homes that we go to make sure that we are strengthening our skill set as leaders, researching and looking up our agendas that we want to fight for, and make sure that we're not doing these things alone and that we're in community with each other to move constructive change. So NAACP is an example of that. Shout out to y'all for putting on this amazing digital conference.
Raven said, I agree with Kennedy. I also believe it's important to go out with the polls with your family and become familiar with the process. Young people can also join NAACP. Young people can also volunteer to help local candidates with their campaign. Definitely agree with that. We ran out of time. Thank you so much for your insights. And if you have no more questions, then that's it for this political panel. Dr. Angela Riley, Raven Waters, Kennedy Edwards, Ms. Tiffany Lofton, keep doing what you're doing. Kennedy, I look forward to seeing you in Miss USA one day. You are all remarkable. Thank you so much. Our next panel is more financial shifts. As we're focusing on leveling up during the coronavirus, that means taking time to come out of the pandemic stronger, smarter, more educated, more tech savvy, whatever leveling up means. Maybe that means balancing your finances while the pandemic or getting work, or internships, or early exposure. Or maybe that means learning how to balance summer classes while finding great semester classes. Please welcome our speakers to level up academically, financially, and professionally. Our first panelist is the founder of the Finance Bar, a go-to source for financial wellness. He is named Building Great 2016 Best Money Expert in the next one chapter. Consider on TV on Investment, Forbes, New York Times, and MSNBC. Please welcome Ms. Mark Clark. Hello.
Hi, I can.
Okay, great. Our next speaker is a powerhouse medical student and influencer who goes by Med School Mila. She is a blogger and actively helps students prepare for med school and college applications. Please welcome Camila Evans. While we wait, our next panelist is the founder of Capital Wise. He is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where he received his bachelor's in marketing and economics from the Bryan School of Business, and was honored with the Young Alumni of the Year Award in 2019. Help me welcome Mr. George Achiampong Jr.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Next is a former pageant competitor who now works as an educator, helping students reach their highest potential. She is a proud Spelman graduate and the founder of the Smith Scholarship Foundation. Please give a warm welcome to our last panelist, Dr. Shanna Woods.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you all feeling today? Let's start with Mr. Achiampong.
I am feeling great. This is a phenomenal event. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. So thank you. That was good.
You want to go, Dr. Woods?
I'm feeling amazing. It's a wonderful day. The sun is shining. I'm glad to be here with all of you guys, share some knowledge, get some insight, and see how we can move forward.
Definitely, Ms. Barnes.
Feeling good. It's sunny. It's not sunny here. We have a thunderstorm, so
It's raining.
I'm like dodging the lightning outside. But aside from that, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, Camila.
I'm feeling good. Thank you, first of all, for having me. It's been a really good session so far. I'm excited to figure out what we're about to talk about.
Awesome. So I guess the most pressing question right now is, what does productivity look like right now? Students all over have lost internships. study abroad opportunities, and even time to focus on building career skills, building their finances. So what is possible right now for building oneself up and setting professional goals? How can we do that when we're stuck home?
You know, I think the most important thing, or the first thing that I think about when you ask that question is, I grew up hearing, when one door closes, look for a window. So when we talk about students losing internships and being delayed from starting summer programs and schools and different things like that, I can imagine, you know, everybody's looking for a window of opportunity, something, you know, that they can get into to kind of give them some hope and help them redirect themselves. But nobody ever talks about what to do while you're waiting for that window to come. Like nobody ever talks about, okay, this is what waiting looks like. This is what you do while you're waiting. This is how you're going to feel while you're waiting. And I think it's important when we talk about that waiting period, especially when we're in a season of loss and all of the things that are going on in this time. It's really about rediscovering yourself. Rediscovering yourself. This is the time where you have the time to sit down and think about, okay, is this really the path that I want to do, you know, or the path that I want to go? Because it's so oftentimes we get so caught into what our plan is, we never have this much time to really sit down and reevaluate and say, okay, is this really what I want to do? Or the steps that I'm taking really steps that are going to get me where I want to go? Or are we just throwing stuff at the wall, doing whatever will stick? And then you add these times on top of it. And somebody on the last panel was talking about, I don't know who it was, you know, when we're sitting at home, we have all this time on our hands. There's so much, there's only so much you can do at home, you know. And so then again, that goes back to the time where it's like, okay, what do you do while you're waiting? What do you do with those feelings? And it's like, well, once you take the time to reevaluate what it is that you want to do, what that looks like, what steps are going to get you there. I remember Oprah always said, take the next best step. Whatever that is, you won't know 5 steps ahead, but take the next best step. So once you identify what the next best step is, then you start to devise an action plan. And I think right now, even though we're at home, we can't interact inside of the classroom, we can't interact inside of the boardroom. This is a time where, I don't know, take an online class, go to YouTube University, learn some skills, learn how to work Photoshop, sis, learn how to do something, you know, on your own time at that, because outside of these times, we're always so forced to be on a timeline. And right now, there is no timeline. And so the opportunities are endless, the things that you can come up with at home. But I think with that, it's also important to remember not to give into the pressure. You know, we see on Instagram where everybody's like, if you don't come out of COVID-19 with a new hustle and making a whole lot of money, you know, what were you doing? And that's just not the reality. Like, you know, you have to throw that self-care in there too. And so it's a lot to balance, but really kind of identifying what the next best step is and how you're going to do that. And then identifying different ways. Like I said, like YouTube is a good one. TikTok is a great one to build a platform. Somebody else said that on the previous panel. You know, creating something, or even creating your own lane, creating your own opportunity instead of waiting for somebody else's opportunity when we come out of it. I think those are all really important things to remember and keep in line when we start to discuss questions like that.
Right.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, I agree with everything that you just said. And I remember graduating in 2009, which was around a time when the economy in the world wasn't necessarily in a great place either. And this quote that stuck out to me, you know, is on the brink of hardship sparks creativity and innovation, right? So when you're in a season where it's uncertain, you know, I remember going back to that time period when I was graduating, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And the video is, you have to remember that, like, and I think everybody on this panel can agree, time moves fast, right? And so you might think that, learning this extra skill or having to do these things to become this person or get this type of job is going to take so much time. The reality is that time's going to pass anyway. So one of the things you can do, like she was saying, acquire some different skills, is start to reverse engineer, like, what does that ideal career look like? right? They're going to post all of the details of the job description. So how can I start going out and acquiring these skills step by step? And it might seem like it's far away, but you'll look up, and the next thing you know, you'll acquire all these skills and you positioned yourself for that dream career, or at the very least, you've acquired enough skills to maximize and create your own opportunity. And so that's one thing that I would encourage everybody to do. It doesn't matter if the dream job is available or if you're currently qualified. You have the ability right now to see what it takes to get there and start to check off those boxes one by one to those skills. And that's something that I would talk about right now.
And even to piggyback off of that, when we're talking about skills, even while you're in the phase of deciding what it is that you want to do, because nobody ever tells you either that what you want to be is 9 times out of 10 never what you end up to be. Like, life will take you so many different places, so many different situations and journeys that you will never, nobody expected this to happen. But it's all redirection to whatever our ultimate path is. So when we talk about skills, learning these skills so that you're prepared for whatever comes your way, it's important to also include how important it is to learn transferable skills. Skills that apply everywhere across the board. It doesn't matter if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be a teacher, if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is that you want to be. It's important to also include and learn a whole lot of transferable skills that you can apply anywhere that'll make you qualified.
And I think it's important also, as Dr. Sheena and George mentioned, when we think about college, many of us had a plan, as Sheena mentioned, about what we want to do, and we tie a lot of our emotions to that. So when you think about ways that we introduce ourselves, even in college, like I'm X person's girlfriend, I am a part of this sorority or this fraternity, I am going to go be an engineer, I am Dr. Marsha, I am medical this, I'm a physician. So many of the ways that we introduce ourselves, and I think we just talked about it here, just briefly, we mentioned a lot of things that's enticing to social media to make us feel like we have now leveled up. So everyone gives themselves a title to be what we think the world will accept. So I think a great lesson right now for those that are in school or those that have just graduated is this is the perfect time now to say that everything that you thought about yourself or what title makes you better than someone else. Like, we have millionaires that's suffering from this pandemic. We have people that had the best of jobs to get laid off. So if your internal well-being is really based on the title that you can give yourself, then I think that you'll have a lot of disappointment in life. But when you can bring it back to how am I of value to someone? As George mentioned, how am I just getting better for me? You may not land where you thought that you wanted to land in college. Maybe there's something better. So I just think that it's very important at this time for college students and others just remember that your title in no way defines you at all. Because if it does and you're laid off and you're furloughed, it can be a huge disappointment and it can honestly bring on depression that you're just not prepared to handle. So I think that's extremely important that we all remember that.
I can definitely relate to that last one because I feel like my situation's a little bit different. I'm in a very structured program. I'm in medical school. Everything goes by, step by step, what we need to do. Board exams we need to pass, clerkships and rotations we need to kind of be on, and everything got kind of halted. And I found myself kind of grieving the loss of what it was to be the last in the completion of these programs. So although I'm completing it in a totally different way. And I noticed that a lot of the graduates, unfortunately, didn't get to have graduation. A lot of the fourth years had to be prematurely graduated to start working in the hospitals when they hadn't even gotten a full graduation to be able to celebrate, 4 years of tough medical school. A lot of just, in terms of those last steps, I found myself really getting angry. And then I realized that this is kind of a small opportunity to take advantage of this new kind of idea. So my last year was supposed to be interviewing for residencies all across the nation. That is now going to be all online. And at first I was really excited because this is the most kind of exciting part to kind of pick what you want to do. And now it's a totally different process. But now I'm excited to kind of figure out how to create new ideas, how to make sure that I can present myself in the best way to these programs. And I think a lot of students that are kind of going into these more structured programs are also grieving and trying to figure out. And a lot of them, like you said, Marsha, are getting really depressed about, maybe I can't do it. It was perfect until now my MCAT's canceled, or now my board exam is canceled. And this is like a sign that I can't apply this cycle. And I just want to remind you guys that it's not supposed to be that way. You guys are supposed to continue through. Don't stop. I mean, this is something that's affecting everybody. And so although I say take your time, process, I did too, grieve, but get right back to it, because this is not a stop. This is literally just a chance for you to kind of redirect, and keep on going. So
I want to piggyback off of Dr. Marsha. When we talk about leveling up, and this is like such a lesson. I didn't learn this lesson until about a year ago. Oh my gosh, because you can get so caught up in all these dreams and aspirations that you set for yourself, this pretty picture that you have. And so when we talk about leveling up, I think the most important thing, especially when you're a go-getter and you're pursuing things, is to remember that you are not your accomplishments.
Nope.
You're just not. I remember, and I don't mind sharing this experience I shared this experience with my students, with my mentees and everything. I remember I started my doctorate program at 24. I was 24. I was the youngest across the whole program. I got to the end of my doctorate program at 28. I was 28. And I remember getting to that point and kind of getting down to graduation and all that stuff, and really sat back and didn't know who I was. Because it's like, what's next? What am I supposed to do next? Like, I've done everything that I set out. My plan has been executed. I've been successful. What is it that you do next? How do you feel? And I remember having a moment where self-care had to kick in, and I really had to go and dig deep to figure out, okay, so if I level up from here, what does that look like? Who am I? And then you realize I've been so caught up in, this plan that I had, that along the way you're like, oh, I'm going to be Dr. Sheena Woods. I'm going to have this degree, this degree, this degree. I have this house. I have this car. I've done this. I went to this school. It makes me this. It makes me that. And you forget the most important part of the level up, which is staying in touch with yourself.
That's it.
You are here at the core. What is it that you want? Because the gag is when you accomplish all these things and you go out into the world and start to put that into action, you're going to need to know that when you go into the boardroom,
right?
When you're sitting at the table with a bunch of people, whether they look like you or they don't look like you, or when it's time for you to advocate yourself. If you don't know that, those accomplishments mean nothing. So your level up was a faux level up in a sense.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Yeah. I think, as Dr. Sheena mentioned, this is just about finding that internal joy. And if you don't, it's hard to come back from that. Like, I may be the oldest person on this panel. And I'll tell you that I personally think maybe I've done some great things. But now, as Sheena mentioned, when you look back, it was a thing that I did. It was a moment in time.
Yes.
But it definitely does not define my journey, because before I was Marsha at the finance bar, an entrepreneur and doing all of these things, I was Marsha in the cubicle working at the bank. So if I looked at like one level up was like better than the level up, and it's not even like, I'm sure we'll get to talk about finances. It's not even about money anymore for me. If I don't have that internal joy, none of it matters. I know many millionaires that are miserable.
Yes.
So if everything is based on, I know college students, those that may be watching, everything is based off like getting the bag, getting the next bag, and getting this. And I think, to Dr. Sheena's point, that is why we like think about titles and we think about the degree, because everything is so money focused. Now imagine everything that you do everything is so money driven. And then boom, we have the pandemic and you're like, oh, I can't produce. Oh, I can't make money. I've lost my job. As Camilla mentioned, then who are you at the core, as Dr. Sheena said? So your title literally defines you. How much money you had defined you. Everyone can have the bags now. All I got to do is say it on social media. It doesn't mean that it's real. Right. So when we think about the things that we say and what's really true in our life, get to the core, get to who you really are. One of the last panelists mentioned that she really didn't care about what her parents thought when it came to politics. I'll share with everyone. I think that's very important when it comes to your peers. It doesn't matter what your peers say. It doesn't matter what your peers are doing. Who are you and what do you value most in your life? Because when you get older-ish, like me, Like those are the things that will carry you when you no longer want to like hustle every single day. I don't want to wake up and have to hustle every single day. As I get older, I don't. I want to be able to walk. Many people are like, let me get to work and get on the grid. I'm like, yeah, let me get off the grid. Like to me, that's what truly living is. So I just want to, reiterate over and over the importance of like, find your peace. Find your peace.
Yep.
Find your peace. It's so valuable. Do all of the other great things, but definitely do it for you. But find that internal peace.
Yep.
And I promise you, I think this pandemic and this quarantine may not be easier for you, but it will allow you to say that these are the things that I value in my life right now. George mentioned time flies by, guys. Like a 1 year for us to wait this thing out is really not a long time.
Yep.
We're just moving so quickly, so we never pay attention.
I love that you mentioned that, Ms. Barnes, because your aspirations can change. And thank you for sharing, Dr. Woods, because you could be in one place in your life and then the next minute you completely redirect yourself. And Camila, you can think this as well, how you were able to tie in healthcare with the humanities. So talk about your journey to medical school and that complex journey you had from majoring in the humanities to going to be a doctor.
Yeah, and I think everything that everyone has said really just resonates with my journey. And I want to say, like everyone has said on this panel, if you're steered off the path and you kind of tie it to the title or the next accomplishment, it could really be extremely detrimental and super scary. And even just the thought that you didn't accomplish that goal can kind of throw you off and take you off your path. I have been, honestly, just my main thing, no matter what has happened, I'm saying just stay true to my journey. Stay true to my journey. And that's always been my kind of thing that I bring everything back to. So I was a sociology major. I declared pre-medicine as well, because I was always interested in the sciences. I just didn't know if I wanted to be a doctor. And honestly, I was in the middle of Orange County, California, which is like one of the whitest counties in California, I would say. Very heavy KKK population there. And I was doing more work trying to do diversity and inclusion on my campus than studying and trying to focus on what I was actually going there for and getting my degree. And so I felt like I spread myself out way too thin. I was president of every club. I was trying to lead basically like a revolution on a campus that really didn't care much about me. Although I loved my time at my school, it just defocused me. And so my grades plummeted. And as a medical student, or even trying to apply to med school, grades really are the thing that kind of get you in the door. And so, I basically realized I could not apply to medical school once I graduated. So that was 4 years of private tuition in California that went down the drain. And that was a lot of money. I left, I graduated with basically loans and a sociology degree. After kind of having a few experiences outside of school, and some in school, I realized that medicine was for me. And once you make that decision, like when you realize what you want to do in life, things really start to take off. So I think when you're in college, you're kind of in this exploration phase where you're trying to figure out things. So let yourself do that. It does come at a cost. I don't regret it. But just know that, when you're so young, you have to kind of figure out what you want out of life. And so I gave myself the patience and allowed myself to kind of figure these things out. But once I decided, like, yes, I want to be a physician. Yes, I want to work in this kind of capacity. I was able to apply to post-bac programs, which is basically like a 1-year program to get into medical school. And within a year, I got a 4.0, was able to be published in research, was able to do research in HPV and cervical cancer cells, was able to do volunteer research. Like, I just completely changed my portfolio. And that really was just because of my mindset. And I was in my clarity. And then, I was able to retake the admitting test to get into medical school. I was able to do a little bit better. And still at that point, even with everything that I had done, with, really changing my application, I would say, I still got discouraged. And I got my score back. And I remember asking an advisor, like, if they could help me get into Howard University. That was the medical school I wanted to go to. And one of the teachers there told me basically that I couldn't get in. And I was like, really? Like, after all of, my journey, I still am not allowed to, or I'm still not good enough to get into medical school.
Carla,
and I had to
can you
really...
flip this light switch for me? I can't leave the screen.
I had to really make the decision myself that I wasn't going to listen to another advisor telling me that I wasn't ready, because I knew I was ready. Like deep down inside, I had changed everything about me, my my focus, my grades, everything. I was ready. I wasn't going to allow somebody to tell me that I wasn't. And so I applied, and if I would have listened to that person, I would have literally still been in an undergrad program trying to redo my grades. Now I'm a fourth year medical student. I got multiple acceptances. I got multiple scholarships. And that just goes to show, when you're ready. Yep. Listen to yourself. Of course, you can have a few trusted advisors, but don't let too many people kind of steer you off your path, because it happens way too often, especially to minority students. And especially when that imposter syndrome comes in, like it gets really bad. And so I would say, like, yes, it's been a long journey, but I knew when I was ready, and that click moment to say, yes, I'm going to still apply, even though this advisor at my dream school told me not to. I still went for it. And now I'm like 1 year away from being a doctor. So it's really important to keep on going.
Wonderful. That's amazing. And, for everyone on this panel, what's your advice to students who don't know what they want to do when they're in college and they're kind of conflicted with what their passion is?
I would have to agree with Camila. I think it's so important that at a younger age, you're not supposed to have it figured out. I believe we often hear that after high school, it's like, oh, you're an adult now, you're grown now, go figure it out. Like even in college, like having a son that has, went to undergrad, graduated, went on to go to grad school, graduated there. I always tell them that you can always reinvent yourself to do something else. Mm-hmm. Who you were, in undergrad is not the same person you were in grad school, and who you are now is not that person in high school. So I would encourage them to give it time. Give it time. There's not a wrong answer for your life. As long as you're doing something that's legal, I would say that there's not a playbook for what should happen in your life, but definitely give yourself time to be like still a young person and figuring it out. That's all good.
I think it's important to expose yourself. I remember when I was writing my dissertation, and that kind of touched on that a little bit, because we are dealing with variations of individuals who have different socioeconomic backgrounds and circumstances and access to resources and different things like that. It looks different for everybody, how they figure that out or what their options are. Because when we talk about that, we often forget that there are also some individuals who don't have the option to figure it out. They have to go to work. They got families to take care of. They may be first generation to complete high school and don't know what's next. So I think the most important thing is to don't limit yourself to one opportunity. Go out and expose yourself. Go out and find these different opportunities, or these different seminars, or these different festivals and these different conferences like the one that we're on right now. Go out and just be exposed. Go to an art gallery. You may discover, while walking through an art gallery, that you love art and you want to explore that. You may go to, I don't know, your doctor's office one day and be curious about that and decide, you know what, I really didn't like science in high school, but I'm interested in this. Let me find out more about this. Go to the library. If you can't, get around, you don't have transportation to get around, go to the library and pick up a book about anything and, see if that interests you and opens up the possibilities. Right now, you have the whole world at your fingertips. Take that opportunity to just start looking at stuff, figuring out. And then if you discover, there's nothing really out there right now that fits who I am, then create something that fits you. The world will always converge to you. If you let it, if you give it the opportunity to do something. There's always a need for something. There's always a need for you somewhere. Like I have students who have created their own apps and have been successful, and have chosen, these could be 4.0 students who go to a traditional 4-year university and go into something, but they chose to create their own instead, and are just as successful. So don't limit yourself to a picture that it has to include a 4-year university. It could be anything that you want it to be. Success is how You measure it. The world will always have room for you and what you have to offer. So create that own picture for yourself, but don't limit yourself at the same time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. I think, my parents' generation, and even the early part of, when I was in school, you might not think that there's any path that you can pursue. But now we know more than ever. I mean, people are making millions of dollars streaming, playing video games, right? So I say that to say that you guys have the luxury that a lot of the previous generations didn't have, that you have proof. Like, no one can tell you that, oh, that's not a career. You can't make money doing that. No one can tell you that, right? And so it gives you the freedom and the autonomy to pursue what matters to you. Like, if you truly enjoy it, if you're truly inspired by it, you can find or create a career in that lane. We have so much evidence that that's possible, right? And so I just want you guys to be inspired by that. It doesn't matter what doors are shut, what opportunities are not on the table. Lean into what inspires you, because you create that opportunity. We have that proof. Like, we no longer can say that. And I remember hearing, back when I was in college, I had friends who were dancers. And the parents just were like, okay, that's cool. You can have that as a major, but, what else are you going to do? What's your fallback plan? And we see now that there's folks who, have these dance companies or opportunities, and they're making millions of dollars doing it. And so it's just, whatever the career path is, whatever you are inspired by, whatever makes your heart sing, so to speak, know that you can do that and still create a career out of it.
That speaks to the phrase that I heard a lot too growing up: do what you love and the money will come. But what was behind that growing up, because I think we're from like a different generational mindset where doing certain things just wasn't acceptable. Going to major in certain things is like, you want to do what? And so now, it's like, yeah, you guys have the proof and the money will come. I remember having one particular student who wanted to do nails. Oh my gosh. Her mother was old school, like my parents. And it was like, you can't make a living off of that. And then I had another student who wanted to do art, and their parents was like, psh, I mean, you could do that as a hobby on the side, but you can make that a minor, but we not paying for that to be a major. And then boom, social media blows up, and you see all these young women and young men who do nails, who do hair, God knows what, traveling here and there, going with this person, that person, and they're making more money than those of us with four-year degrees plus them, and so it's a blessing for this generation now, especially in a time like this. Like, if you are not encouraged, rest in the fact that doing what you love, the money will come, because the opportunity is there to really do what you love and not be judged are endless. You can do whatever you love. If it's nails, if it's hair, if it's dancing, if it's God gave you the gift of influencing people and you just good with talking, if writing is your thing, everybody's buying a self-help book right now, or a planner, or whatever it is. That money, if that's what fuels you at the end of the day, that will come. But I'm telling you, it is our world right now for this generation coming up. This is living proof. You don't need anything else. Whatever you do, if it's what you love and it's what if it's what gives you peace, like Marsha said, if it gives you peace, it's what you love, everything else will come.
Yeah. And segue into economics of COVID, we know that the economy wasn't that great started this pandemic. Yeah. So for our financial experts, touch upon the residual effects of COVID and what this means for our recent graduates.
George, you want to take that one?
Sure. So as your question, what is the residual impact of COVID from a financial standpoint? Yeah. So, right now, and when this first happened, you saw a lot of companies that were furloughing employees, a lot of companies that were laying employees off, a lot of companies that were freezing hiring. And naturally, that's the season, that you guys are going into, hoping to be able to take advantage of some of these opportunities, right? And so, no matter how fast or whenever we get back to normal, whatever that looks like, there's going to be a long tail and a long impact as it relates to companies rehiring again and what that looks like. We have to accept that. We understand that. And I know what this looks like because I graduated in 2009 at the end, the start of another recession. And so one of the things we know about these times is that no matter what happens right now, we know that there's going to be long-term behavioral changes as a result of what happened. So for example, if you look back to the last recession, people would have told us, in 2005 that I would be hopping in a random person's car and their regular car and riding around the city, I would have told them the truth. Or I'd be renting a room in a regular person's house that, that's not a hotel. I would have told them that they were crazy, right? And so we have to realize that this time is going to create a new wave of opportunities. And so while the residual impact might mean that what you thought you were going to be able to take advantage of is no longer on the table, it's going to present a whole plethora of new opportunities in this season. And so the encouraging thing is having that context and knowing what that looks like and being prepared to be in position to take advantage of those opportunities, right? Being agile, being an early adopter, because a lot of folks, when these other companies first came out, I know I was a late adopter for Uber and for Airbnb, right? And maybe by happenstance, because I live in a city that it wasn't as widespread in the beginning, but I'm encouraging you guys to be very agile and lean in quickly to the changes that we're seeing and try to spark and create some of that innovation, right? Like think about, okay, well, here's a great example, right? People are now going to be germaphobes for the next, year, 2 years, right? So what type of technology are people going to lean into, right? We know that, voice tech is something that some of us use, some of us don't, but I believe anything that's voiceless and touchless is something that people are going to lean into a lot more. So can I create technology that leans into that? Can I be at the forefront of that? Can I work for a company or look for opportunities that are leading the charge in some of the areas where the world might change? Because those might be the companies that are hiring, right? There might be a lot of companies that aren't hiring as a result of what's happening, but there are going to be companies who lead into this innovation who are going to be hiring at scale. For example, the grocery delivery companies, I think they were hiring like 200,000 new workers in 1 month because people didn't want to go to the grocery stores. And so it's incumbent upon you guys to use your smart, young, sharp minds to identify how the world is changing and how I can capitalize on that, right? And I'm not going to speak a lot about the quote unquote economic impact that it's going to have on you guys because you guys are just getting started. So you shouldn't even put the anxiety or the worry of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I think what's about this, and Mark will probably agree with you, is that the best thing you can do graduating college is not acquire a bunch of lifestyle. Right now, you're kind of forced into that, well, I don't know what the world's going to look like. Everything's not what I thought it was going to be. But that's going to be a really great thing for you long term because when everything's going perfectly, you go out, you get the nice car, you feel the need, I don't need a roommate, I'm going to go get the nice apartment. You go get all this lifestyle, and you develop very early on the habit of spending unnecessary money. And the problem with that is it's a lot harder to unravel that versus actually starting from a foundational level where you never, acquire all that lifestyle. So this is going to be a blessing in disguise for you guys because you don't have to go out and do all those things that are keeping up with the Joneses that a lot of people do to show how they're successful when they graduate. Because right now we all know it doesn't make sense and nobody's doing it. And so now you guys get to start with a clean slate, focusing on what's truly important and being able to put yourself in a position to lean into a career that you love versus having to do something just because you need to keep up with your lifestyle. Right. And so I think that is actually a blessing. It's not a bad thing. You got to have a positive residual impact because you're not going to accumulate unnecessary debt that you're going to have to pay off. Right. And so just double down on, again, leaning into companies who are potentially on the precipice of the technology change of how the world's going to shift. And on top of that, keep your expenses low so that you can focus on what matters most to you. Because you don't want the burden and the stress of credit card debt and all this extra stuff when you don't have to. So that would be my advice to you guys right
now. Oh, that's good, George. That's wonderful. Actually, I believe that George nailed it with that because as a college student, or if you just graduated, now is the perfect time to figure out what lifestyle do you want. a lot of times we take on careers and we're like, I just want to make this amount of money. And we don't even know if that money will even sustain our lifestyle. I remember one, and maybe, you know, a college student listening to this can take this piece of guidance from me. I remember when my son first graduated and he just dare not want to stay at home with us, you know, which was perfectly fine. One thing that I did was took him out to say, like, hey, where do you want to live? Like, how much does the apartment cost? Like, you want a mortgage if that's what you think that you want, but at the same time, if you want to be creative, as Dr. Sheena mentioned, that's what you want to do. You want to become an entrepreneur. He went to school for communications. What does that look like for you? So let's go backwards. Let's figure out how much your lifestyle will cost you, and now let's figure out how much money you may have to make. Maybe it's not the job that you have to be at for like 60 hours a week. Maybe you can work 15 hours a week. As George mentioned, like the opportunities are endless, but don't think that the goal is to get this perfect job to make this perfect salary. And you don't even know if that will sustain your lifestyle. So this is the perfect opportunity to just figure out. I did this exercise with a group of college students last week, of interns from Dale. And we talked about, like, what will your lifestyle cost you? Every money is not always the factor. Of course, we have to earn money, but what does that look like from a perspective of dollars and cents? Like, what does that mean for you? And maybe what you thought, and while you're in college, like during this pandemic, like Dr. Sheena said, maybe you want to do nails. Okay, how many hands do I have to do to earn the amount of money if all of my bills, including my business expenses and my personal expenses, are $5,500 per month? Then my goal is to make $5,500 per month doing nails. And that degree that I have, I got it, and I can use it somehow. Like, I don't know, go teach, go be an adjunct professor, maybe do that part-time. But what I do to earn that $5,500 is I do nails, and I'm happy, I have joy, I have peace, and I'm doing nails. So really think about how much your lifestyle will cost you. Write it down, dream big, whatever it is, and then reverse engineer that when those jobs do come, as George mentioned, because they will.
Yeah, there's no amount of money that you can earn to fill the void of being unfulfilled. No. There's no amount of money. And what will happen is it's a vicious cycle, right? You go get the job that you thought you had to get to acquire the lifestyle that you thought you wanted. And then because you're unfulfilled, you just end up spending more money to try to fill the void of unfulfillment. And then you have to stay stuck in that job because you kept buying more stuff to fill that hole, and you never got out of it. So if y'all could take anything away from this panel discussion today, it's lean into what makes your heart sing. Do not let anybody turn you away from saying, this is what I want to do. And like Marsha said, what is my lifestyle that I want to live? And just match those two up. Like, you want to have career and lifestyle alignment. If those two things are not in alignment, it's hard to ever have peace. Right? This theory of my personal life, my professional life, it's one life. If you don't enjoy the professional, it's going to spill over into the personal. If you have problems at home, it's going to spill over into work. So, like, create this harmonious balance between what life looks like behind the scenes, personally, whatever, and then what it looks like professionally. Gone are the days where you have to put on a front to go to an interview to try to get a job, right? And basically put this image of yourself to get the job, and then you wonder why you don't enjoy it when you got the job. Right? Show up as you are, because that is going to help you attract the opportunity that aligns with you. When you try to front, fake it till you make it, all right, then you're just going to end up getting in positions and opportunities that don't align with who you are. If that company, if that position is not enough for who you are right now, then maybe that's not the right position, right? Like, trust that. And there is a certain level of, making sure that you present yourself in the right light, but don't do it so much so that you're basically just trying to get a job. Like, we all seen those memes, the crying Jordan meme, when you in Excel on your resume and then you get to the job, right? Like, you know what that's it. You know what I'm saying? And again, which all is full circle to this moment of, if that is what you want to do, get that skill, right? Go get that skill so that you can actually show up and not have to fake it, and then have anxiety every day you go to work, because that's not who you really are or what you have the capacity to do.
All right, and before we end this panel, I want to segue into the importance of Black-owned businesses. There are so many resources now, and where to locate them, where to support them. How important is it for our community to continue supporting Black-owned businesses and make our own Black dollar grow? Talk about the power of the Black dollar.
Oh, I would like to say maybe short in short is that we actually have to support each other because we are our brother and sisters keepers. If we don't do it for us, no one else will. And I truly believe, I want to say this before we end, is I believe a lot of times when we find that Black people don't support Black businesses, when we don't get some of the things or earn as a Black business owner as our peers do in some spaces, it's because many people just feel, and George, you can help me with this, many people feel like many Black people just don't have money to spend with us.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't even market to sometimes our own people because we feel like if our prices are a certain amount or our services a certain amount, that certain like Black people don't have money to spend with Black people.
Right.
That is my belief. And that's just a myth. Like 98% of my clients are Black women, aside from clients that like B2B businesses that I work for, they're Black. So I think that that's one thing that we have to really get out of our minds and just jump out there to stop believing that we don't have the resources to support our own businesses, because in fact we do.
I think, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I think just listening to that, what came to my mind was for us, by us. Mm-hmm. Because if you really take a step back and you look at what's going on, it's almost like we have stepped back into our middle school history book. That's the reality of what's going on now. And if we don't change the narrative and support things that we have created, then we continue to be vulnerable at the hands of corporations and businesses that weren't necessarily created for the good of us. So then if it all falls down and we come back down to a time where we're pushed into a corner because we didn't support our own people, then we're just out of luck all the way around, because everything wasn't indeed created for us. So we have to have some type of ownership for ourselves. That's what our people fought for. So we can have that ownership for ourselves and to keep that. And it takes work for us to do that. But right now, in the state of the world and everything that's going on, it's going to be so important that we continue to hold that dear and we support that, because that time could very well come tomorrow. So much is going on with that. We have to support that because it could come a time where that's all we'll have.
True. Well, you've heard it from the Level Up panel. I hope you all are taking notes. We're all dropping gems. I've really learned so much. A huge thank you to Dr. Shenna Woods, Miss Marsha Barnes, Mr. George Champong Jr., and Camila Evans. As a side note, be sure to follow all of the speakers on their socials. Connect on LinkedIn. These are all very good connections to have, and you are all absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is our highly anticipated student panel. We're bringing in 4 stellar college students and hearing from them. They're this event's faces of Black College America. See Khalil James, Danielle Gathers, Felicia Tucker, and Michael Franklin right now. Stay tuned and let's bring them all in. Starting with the president of the undergrad student body at MIT. She is also the first Black female president. She has a ton in store. Please welcome Danielle Gathers.
Thank you.
Hi, Danielle.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Next up is the vice president of the Student Government Association at Howard University. One of the sweetest people I've met. Please welcome and a big happy birthday to Michael Franklin.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Hello, I can hear you.
Well, hey, thanks for having me.
Introducing the SA president of Binghamton University. He wears many hats and continues to be a strong role model for everyone on campus. Please welcome the poised and brilliant Khalil James.
Hi.
Hi. Following Khalil is the president of the Black Student Union at Princeton University. She is bold, courageous, and has a great sense of humor. Please give a warm welcome to Felicia Tucker.
Hi, all.
Hi, and everyone's here. How are you guys?
We're doing good. I'm doing good. Happy birthday, Michael.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, let's just take a moment and bask in this young Black excellence on this panel. So much power and potential. And this is what we need to see for the culture. Positive images of us, positive role models, and you all exemplify that. So that's amazing. So I want to get started with taking up space, specifically for schools like MIT, Princeton, even my school, Binghamton, are all PWIs except for Howard University. And we're seeing 2 Black student body presidents, one from Bing and one from MIT. So Khalil and Danielle, touch upon what being your president means to you, being the school president means to you.
Yeah, I can go first. To me, I'm really excited. I think historically MIT has struggled with Black female recruitment. So I think kind of being able to be the face of the school, hopefully encouraging more Black women to apply, and then also convincing them to come, because we do have competitors out there. So I'm really excited from that front. I also think it's kind of perfect timing in terms of unfortunate events with police brutality and kind of the killing of Black people everywhere. I think right now we're really in negotiations with our administration, and I'm really hopeful for change to come.
Leo?
Hi, y'all can hear me? Can y'all hear me? Are we good to go?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Dope. I mean, yeah, so for me, I was introduced to the Student Association my freshman year. At this time, you know, we had just newly elected our first Black SA president, and then the following year we had another SA president that was Black as well, named Jerry Toussaint. However, it was just more so like knowing that, you know, going to a predominantly white institution, it was a big win, and I wanted to continue that momentum. And so that was one of the things that, like, similar to what Danielle shared, it's just really just me being able to pave the way for folks that's coming under me. You know, I would love to see a Black VPF, a Black, you know, vice president for academic affairs. We had one in 2017 to 18, and just keeping that representation there, because we're not the decision makers, but we bring the voices of the underrepresented to add, and that's often missed if your executive board is predominantly white.
Yeah, and Danielle, you're the first Black woman serving as president. A long time coming, but it shows progress. So give us the rundown. What is the experience like for you running for president? What are some ways you plan to impact your student body?
Yeah, so I think I wasn't really surprised to be the first Black woman. Like I said, we kind of struggle with recruitment on that front. But just moving forward, I'm really kind of excited to use like both of my identities to kind of balance what our advocacy looks like. So we have like violence prevention response at our school, and they've been understaffed and underfunded. So I'm really excited to step that up. I'm trying to tackle harassment. And on the other side, like anti-Black racism. And kind of like Black and Indigenous peoples, racism in general. We still celebrate Columbus Day. We're really hoping to change that by September. So in October, hopefully we'll be celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, and just Black faculty and staff. It's low numbers, matriculation in general isn't bad. So I think really just making sure we're supporting the Black Student Union at our school, National Society of Black Engineers. We have people doing the work, and I think our student government has historically like forgotten about them or just trying to advocate in our own lane. So I'm really excited to collaborate with those groups and push for change.
That's so important, the idea of while you climb. And Khalil, I know you mentioned Jerry Toussaint. Talk about the importance of having a mentor who looks like you, who's been in the position you wish to be in, and why that's important.
Very important. Like I said, like, it motivated me to be something that I never really came to college to be in the first place, right? I never thought about student government at all, actually. I was just trying to keep my head down, similar like high school, probably play sports here and there, and just graduate, right? And then you start seeing some of the more disproportionate ways that I was prepared for high school, and how the student body was operating outside of just like without Jerry's leadership, right? Like before Jerry, a lot of students was like, we've never met any of the SA leaders, right? They don't see them at events. And it was very weird to me that that was existing, right? So if you're the president, but people don't, a student body president at least, people should see you. You're a student. It's not like you're not in their classes. So you should be doing kind of the same things that they're doing. Of course, you have a level of like professionalism that people do hold you to, but I don't see why you can't hang around your peers. And so Jerry did that very well. He made sure that everybody in the community felt his presence. And so that was one of the things I made sure I did, as I was campaigning. But, as my last year as vice president for multicultural affairs, I made sure that people understood, like, not only am I doing the background work or just the, behind the scenes, but I'm actively with you in all of the events. And even when we talk about like social justice, social reform, like I'm in that conversation too, and I'm comfortable taking my hat off, right? I don't have to be in the president seat. If I'm in your space, like I can just be Khalil as well. And that's one of the important dynamics that Jerry taught me. So.
And Michael, you're in a completely different position from an HBCU, knowing that mainly all student gov presidents and vice presidents like yourself have been Black. So what has your experience been like on the contrary?
So within the administration I serve in, I actually have the privilege of serving under only the 12th woman president of the Howard University Student Government Association, which was a bit mind-blowing considering we're the 60th administration and Howard is a predominantly woman-to-man ratio. So knowing that so few women have been SGA presidents at Howard is just really ridiculous in the first place. But it's something that I'm proud to serve in that role, serving as vice president and being able to help amplify a strong, amazing Black woman, Rachel Howell, who wish she could be here. She might be tuning in, but she's a superstar. And so being at an HBCU, it's really about making sure that we're taking a leadership role and we're continuing to ensure that we're not only representing the other 100+ HBCUs that are out there, but also making sure that we're able to build connections with other Black student leaders across any institution here in the United States. So it's very heartwarming and amazing to see y'all's beautiful Black faces out here and continuing to serve, continuing to work as well.
Of course. So the big question, or one of the big questions, every university tackled the move-out process differently due to the pandemic. So each of you talk about the way your school approached the pandemic initially. Give us a rough timeline, starting with Felicia.
Sure. It hit us out of nowhere. The campus was in chaos for that whole week. I know from where I was sitting at, the first news we got it at was at a dance rehearsal for my African dance team that I'm on campus. And it was heartbreaking at the time because at first, we go through the stages of grief. We were all in denial that it was happening. We had a large class of seniors that we all looked up to. And, it was kind of tough to not get to have that last semester with them. And we had all the senior festivities planned. And it was going to happen in those 2 months that we didn't have on campus, which was unfortunate. They told us to get our stuff and go, basically. Some people would stay on campus, but I know I was fortunate enough to have a home that I could come back to in South Carolina. But I only had 3 days to pack my stuff. So it was all tough. Fortunately, I had a few friends on campus that had cars and whatnot, so I could use them to go off. But since Princeton is a majority, everyone lives on campus, it's tough to try to figure out where is the storage going, where you're getting money to go back home and to store your stuff. And then you had activities canceled out in the summertime or just different shows and kind of big capstone projects that people were trying to be involved with at the end that just basically went to nothing because we weren't on campus. So yeah, it was just a tough time that whole week. Yeah, I'll let somebody else take it and see what they got to say.
Yeah. Khalil?
For Binghamton University, I would say we handled it pretty well, I'll be honest. Comparing it to other schools, so Binghamton University gave the option of you staying on campus if you lived on campus. And so with that, it gave people an ample time to just figure out what was going on. So like I chose to stay on campus as well, just because I didn't want to go home and do classes. And so, but some people stayed on campus just because, they needed time to get their parents situated. Their parents didn't have vehicles. Might have put a couple extra hours, rent a car, and come get them. And some folks left in April. Some left like May 19th, which was the last day. And I think they gave us a nice heads up. They provided us with our refund checks. We got about 45% back. That's how much of the semester we had left. And so some students were getting any range from, I think the maximum I've heard so far was like 3,000, which is decent considering tuition is about 6. And so I think, in terms of just moving off campus, that was fair enough. And then they provided students with once they relocated you. So I was living in what's called Mountain View, and Mountain View is just up on the hill, and they put everybody that's on campus into one community, Dickinson. And so they provided us with trucks to help us move, and people would they had these little green carts and stuff, and they put it loaded on the trunk and meet you down there. So I think in terms of just helping the movement, they did pretty well comparing it to other colleges of what I've heard.
Yeah, Danielle?
Yeah, so we're right next door to Harvard, and they actually let out a week before us. So there's a lot of confusion on campus, and we were kind of like, are we getting sent home? What's happening? And so they said we would get sent home, but then they said we had a week to pack up our stuff. So I think this was probably like a Thursday, they told us. And then I guess the cases started skyrocketing, and they got scared. So they kind of, it was unfortunate, but they were like, you guys basically have the weekend to move out by Monday. One good thing was that they said, if you put your stuff in boxes and leave it in your room, we'll take it, and we'll take it to storage, and we'll store it for you. So that was kind of nice. And then they offered, I think it was up to $500 in reimbursements for a flight home or something like that. But it was unfortunate for our seniors. A couple of them had parties on the yard. It was really sad for them all to go home. But I think it was iffy. There was a lot of confusion. There was a leak that we were going to actually be sent home before the official email got sent out. So I know a lot of people were confused, and the graduating seniors were really sad about it. But I think we're able to do a lot of virtual events. So it was unfortunate, but we're trying to stay strong.
Michael?
Yeah, ours, it was very tough considering when everything really started to go crazy was right when our spring break was starting. So for the seniors, it was a really tough emotional experience because they were just thinking, oh, okay, I'll see you later, coming back after spring break, but to then never see their friends or their graduating class again after that hit really tough. And so originally Howard's main focus was, all right, spring breaks this week, we're going to give a tentative return date of mid-April for folks to return. And you can take online courses, online classes, and just have an extended spring break, more or less. But then a few days later, things got even crazier. And it was like, all right, you need to try and move your stuff out or come back and get your stuff, but you'll have a week span to do that. And then things got even worse. And then a couple of days later, they said, all right, you have until the end of this week. You can leave your stuff in your rooms. We'll figure out whether you can come and get it in person later on, or we'll hire movers that you can get to put it in storage for you, etc. But at this point, things are getting too dangerous. So if you left for spring break, do not come back. And everyone else will try and send you, we'll try and make sure you're able to get home. For some students, especially Howard has a pretty high international student and Pell Grant recipient population. So it's financially almost impossible for a lot of students to be able to get the money to travel or even having a safe home to for real get to. And so Howard ended up housing students in local hotels and partnered with some local institutions and organizations to ensure students had safe housing. through the end of May and to give time to like help them figure out a relocation plan and everything. And then earlier this summer began the process and phases of students being able to come back and retrieve their items that they left, or hiring movers to retrieve those items as well. And so like, while like emotionally it was tough, and there definitely could have been some better ways to have handled some of the communication just because it was so sporadic and always changing. I think compared to some institutions, like having that timeline and giving a time frame for us to be able to kind of say your goodbyes or kind of grab your things, like it was all right. But of course could have been better, but just a tough situation.
Yeah, and you mentioned a good point, Michael. I think one of the unfortunate things about having to leave campus is that that's their home and safe space for many students, and completely leaving their dorm room might have been the least feasible option for them. So touch upon that and how students across your university responded to having to evacuate their dorms.
So one big thing, like for me, like I come from my intersections of being Black and queer. And so like for a lot of my peers and I, it's like being openly Black, being openly queer on campus, like that's a great safe space. That's a great area to fully be yourself. And some folks aren't able to go home and really be their full open selves back at home. And so one way Howard has been able to kind of support opportunities is through online counseling and therapy services through BetterHelp, to ensure that students are able to have that outreach, not only with the university's counseling center, but also being put in tune and in touch with local resources. And there's been various Zoom sessions and stuff. For me, it's been not too bad. Like I'm back in Kansas City now, which is a good 16-hour drive away, but it's just kind of tough being like swept into a different time zone. You know, some students might be on the West Coast, so their 8 a.m. class turned into a 5 a.m. class when classes went online to finish the semester. And overall, the transition's been pretty tough, but we've still found our ways to maintain community, whether it's like organization group calls, being active on social media and communicating with one another, and really just finding ways to stay in touch with each other through Zoom University, for real.
Alicia?
Yeah, I guess. So the question is like how the university responds to students wanting to stay on campus, or how did they best like mitigate when students were off campus? Just to clarify.
Sure, or how students reacted to having to leave that safe space.
Gotcha. Okay. So yes, I want to say there's on Princeton's campus, there's like a nice group of activists, student activists. So I know we saw Harvard's reactions, we saw like Rice University's reaction to students leaving campus, and there was a lot of outcry about how it was like out of nowhere, and then a lot of backlash because these universities didn't have a lot of the support in place to help students with this transition. So there was a group of students that acted quickly. They had a lot of petitions going around saying, okay, we know this is happening, but the university has the capacity and the capabilities to, help these students in such and such ways. And that was expanding the reasons why people can stay on campus, such as food insecurity or lack of access to resources to complete schoolwork, or just feeling secure in a safe space while you complete the rest of the semester, as well as trying to reach out to different departments on campus to say, we have a lot of students that are going to lose internships, if not already lost them. So what kind of financial resources do you have for those, or what kind of opportunities can you make virtually for these people? So yeah, I'll say on that end, we just had students doing their thing, reaching out to people where they needed to, asking for help. I know that's a big thing I know how to do, because I know I can't do this stuff all myself. So reaching out to people, who may have some answers to some questions, as well as just reaching out to other students. I know the BSU have tried to do like different virtual support sessions where there's just playing a game or organizing some talks with incoming freshmen about campus life, doing group GoFundMes, because there are students that are in a position similar to like what Michael was talking about, who had to go back home and then enter spaces. where they don't feel like they can be their true self. So we organize financial support for those students. So, just trying to reach out to different resources, whether it be the campus administrators, faculty, staff, and even just peers. And that's the best ways we could do to try to work this transition.
Yeah, and this was mentioned in the political panel, but Twitter took the storm in putting the narrative that Black people are immune to the coronavirus. So I know many students, college students, brought this kind of narrative to campus. Did you and students on campus take the coronavirus seriously at first? If not, what do you think made a student body click and realize, oh, this is serious?
Yeah, absolutely not. I'll just talk for myself. There was a meme going around. I forgot exactly what it said. It was like the number of cases. This is when it was very like a small number at first. And it was like someone said, I don't see any Black people there. And I was just hopeful that, it was true. And then very quickly I realized how wrong I was. And then I think at that time, I realized, okay, the campus, they're not doing this just to do it, There's moves that have to be made, and we have to, make those moves with them. And it really hit hard when there was a few students of Princeton's campus, some friends of mine that lost family members, close family members to this virus very quickly after we left campus. So that quickly got me together and made me realize, like, okay, people are going through a lot. We have to follow some regulations, and we have to be there to support one another.
Yeah, despite, everything that's going on, you're each doing amazing work and inspiring the next generation of leaders. So what is your advice to high school graduates going to college or college freshmen who is now being immersed into this virtual realm? Like how should they now, carry on from this point forward?
What y'all got?
Take advantage of some of the financial assistance that's being provided. It's kind of been hanging. When you're looking at your overall cost of attendance, my fault, you don't know when that's gonna either come back in its full effect, right? So there's a lot of sorry about that. But yeah, taking advantage of some of the opportunities that are present in terms of helping you. A lot of students could currently file for the unemployment. Save some of that. Save some of that. If you want to invest it, invest it. And then if you're talking about transitioning to classes now, I think one of the best things to do is take advantage of the online aspect of classes as a whole, right? Group chats already existed. You should have more. Office hours are virtual now. Send the professor a Google Calendar invite. Put your Zoom link in it. You're right. Definitely still seek mentors as well. There's people that are, if you're a freshman coming in or just going upward, right? Like, figure out some finesses. That's really what college comes down to be sometimes. Like, what do you think is gonna work now? Because if it's your first time, you never did either or, right? So be like, how have you adjusted? Ask those questions. I think that's off the top of my head. But still, what?
Did you say my name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Cleo. I think also just like stepping out of your comfort zone. I think in college, when you're in person, you're kind of forced to do that. Like you're away from home. But maybe if you're staying at home and it's like remote, it may be harder to do that. So I would say for sure, like follow your student government pages on Instagram, on Facebook. If you're Black, the Black Student Union, like just really be in touch with these orgs, because I think we're all like frantically trying to figure out how to best support freshmen. And I know we have initiatives going on. We're gonna be thinking about you guys and like trying to support you. So just make sure you're available and open to come to these events, because we know it's hard for you. We want to make it as good as possible. So you guys just need to come with like an open mind and heart.
Michael?
Yeah, Danielle makes a really good point, because a big thing we've been trying to game plan for it, how can we help recreate some of those major missed events that the incoming class of 24 missed. Like, they didn't get a prom. So is there any way we can recreate that on campus for them in some way or fashion? But to get back to the question for real, I would say first is shoot your professional shot. Like, now is the time to like go through LinkedIn, look for Black people who like are doing what you want to do, and like just send them a note, reach out, just be like, hey, I'm a college student or I'm an incoming college student, and I just want to see your advice, hear about your career journey. Because more often than not, people are really down to like help you and support you and hear more. And then secondly, I would say is use this time to remember what you're fighting for and to further add education and nuance as we're trying to completely change the like landscape for Black folks all around. And that for the fact that it's for all Black folks. Like, we aren't trying to recreate structures of misogyny or homophobia. And so when we're trying to talk about Black Lives Matter, like, we need to remember that all Black lives matter, like Black trans lives matter, like Black queer lives matter, Black women's lives matter. And we need to make sure that we're centering the most marginalized when we're trying to build this movement. Otherwise, we're going to end up leaving folks on the outside and end up making a movement that's recreating systems that we're trying to tear apart. And that's not what we want.
Good. And that, you guys, was our student panel. As you can see, they're all incredible and incredibly knowledgeable. A big thank you to our stellar panelists, Khalil James, Danielle Gathers, Michael Franklin, and Felicia Tucker. You are all bound to do great things. We can't wait to see you after college. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Coming up next is the mental health panel. You don't want to miss this one, starting right after the break.
We still have more in store. Up next is our mental and physical health panel. Our first panelist is a graduate of Binghamton University, where he received his bachelor's in cinema. Post-graduation, he continues to innovate short videos, music videos, documentaries that highlight mental health awareness. He is talking about mental health. Please welcome Heman Armstrong. Last but certainly not least is a registered nurse and founder/CEO of Nurse Joy. This organization has created a broad span of mental and health awareness events to support underserved communities nationwide. She is the vibrant Kiosha Alexander. Okay, while we wait, they're here, but we can't see them. Don't worry, slight difficulties, we'll get over it. In the meantime, Heman, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just here, quarantine and then chilling by myself. How are you?
I'm doing good. Oh, okay, good. Next up is an influencer and yoga instructor based in Los Angeles, California. She is the founder of the Honey Block. There you go. Hi, Kiosha. And provides millennials with access to techniques, tips, and guides to promote healing from the inside out through yoga, meditation, and other wellness practices. She's merging physical and mental health. Please welcome Branche Fuston.
Hey, yay, we got it to work. Okay. Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you all doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Good, good. I want to start off with Francesca Faston. How are you doing during quarantine?
You know, it's been real. Honestly, like I'm so grateful to my friends and family that are like also deeply into like the healing meditation life, because I think it just makes it easier to have kind of more transparent conversations of when you're having harder days or when you're struggling with anxiety. But I mainly just feel like a deeper sense of connection to the people that I love, which feels good, because we put more of an effort into the way that we communicate, which I think is something that we kind of taken for granted before this time, you know? So that's kind of like where I'm at personally, at least for today.
Yeah. Yosha?
Today I'm doing really well. During the quarantine, I was laid off for like a month and a half. I was definitely able to get my ducks in a row, start like just trying to rebrand myself mentally, physically, emotionally, all those kind of things. So now that I just received a job, now I'm trying to get into a whole new routine. So it's coming along. So I'm doing good so far.
Good. So this is such a needed conversation to have, considering not only the effects of quarantining for months, but doing so amid such a dense overflow of hard to swallow information. So I really want to dissect all of those today and hopefully provide our viewers with some ways to cope and most importantly, stay healthy. So first and most importantly, let's address the profound impact that the continuous acts of violence toward Black people have had on our Black youth. I always talk about the importance of normalizing Black joy, and that's very real, but we have to address that many of our students right now are overwhelmed with anxiety and struggling with trauma. So what is your response to this, and what types of trauma or reactions have you seen within the Black community during these times?
You can go first, Herman.
Yeah.
I'll go first. During this time when I first I want to say that I came off of social media because of everything that was going on. But I came off of social media prior, but you know, you log back on social media here and there because it's like addiction in a way. So when I started to see everything that was going on social media with the Black Lives Matter movement and what was happening between the police and our community, it was a lot. I didn't know how to take it at first, but I just tried to ignore it. I didn't want to, you know, you want to keep yourself alert, you want to keep yourself aware of what's going on, but then you don't want to put yourself in a predicament in terms of too much intake, so, and it can impact your mental health over time. So I know a lot of my friends were going out marching and stuff, and it was like, hey, like, why aren't you coming out marching? And I was like, I personally can't handle that mentally. I just know myself. So what I did do during the time is I signed petitions, and I try to text everyone that's going out there and making sure they was good as well, just because I know what exactly was going on, especially when it came down to the looting. That was another thing that was going on, but I was just trying to stay away, but try to help at the same time. So it was like a push and pull when it came down to everything that's going on right now.
I actually was doing the same thing. Like I felt like being on Instagram, I turned it off. Like just being oversaturated with such like hatred and like it's like, why do you hate us? And then you start questioning yourself and stuff like that. I really definitely had to like be the person this time to just be on the sidelines. And like, so I graduated college in 2014. So when I was in college, we had the Trayvon Martin situation, and we've had so many situations after that where we've seen the people actually get off on killing a Black guy. And it was just like, right now, it's just been too many incidences where right now, this is the one I just can't handle right now. So I definitely feel you on that because I was doing the same thing. I started, wanting to buy more, going to more Black restaurants, just like making sure I am doing my part, but also just being on the sidelines as well, which can also make people try to make you feel bad for that. But you have to protect your mental space, and that is why we're here. So it's like you being in your bubble, if that is what's protecting your heart and your mind, and you're able to stay clear, then that's definitely what you have to do. And it's also conflicting because in the Bible it says to love everybody. So how can we start loving these neighbors who hate us, you know, have a deep problem with us, even if they don't know it's deeply rooted in their generation? And it's like, definitely for me to love people and to still give love and be love, I definitely had to shut off all of the news and the saturation that was coming through like my feeds and all that stuff. Definitely had to shut it down.
So in terms of tackling mental health issues in the Black community, we know that unconscious and conscious bias causes some providers to misdiagnose some people or underestimate their symptoms. So how can leaders in health and mental health address and overcome this issue of racial bias in healthcare, in your opinion?
Me? Oh, okay. Well, for me, I don't think that right now there's going to be a such thing as, you know, right now overcoming. What I can say is you need to be ahead and not behind. And being ahead in your health means knowing your numbers, knowing your health. And that's what I stress in my programs with my nonprofit is you should know your average range of blood pressure. You should know if you're taking medicines. You should know like different things that is keeping your body healthy. And I feel like, especially with Corona happening, it was a straw that broke a lot of camels' backs because people were already so unhealthy. So to get your health in order, I feel like is the best way to, not to say overcome, but stay ahead. It's going to take a lot for people in medicine to even like look at Black people the same as like a Black woman and a white woman, how they think Black women can tolerate more pain, so they don't rush to give them medicine when they're having babies and stuff like that. All that stuff has been proven, and yes, we hear about it, and but we definitely have to be ahead of our health and worrying about like, what can I do to stay healthy and my family? Like reach one, teach one, reach one, whatever that saying is. You know, you reach back because it's like, hey, this is what can be causing you to be sick. Let's change this by changing our eating habits, changing our exercise, changing what we're reading. Like, you need to get the knowledge of health and what can you do to stay healthy, especially during these times.
Yeah, Francesca?
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. I think that is like incredibly on point and useful information. And similarly, like I'm coming from the perspective also as like a cisgendered Black woman. So I know that there's like all these layers and how you present and you identify that will always affect your experiences in the healthcare system and your access. I think specifically when you're talking about like doctors and nurses and urgent care, in my own experience, I have just encouraged all my friends is to like go hard when you're advocating for yourself, because no one is no one knows your body like you do. No one knows how it feels, like what's going on. And there's gonna be times in life, because we are Black people, as we're talking about right now, that you're just gonna get pushback about what you already know is your experience. And so my thing is, always advocate for yourself. And, you know, my parents taught me growing up, like, you never accept the first no, right? So if a doctor tells you no about something, go get the other recommendation, ask for referrals. It's hard if you don't have access to healthcare, like in a traditional way, if you have health insurance or working. And so my little like side trick is also like CVS has a minute clinic. I don't know if anyone knows this, but it's like $60 cash. It's a real doctor, and you can be seen and you can book appointments like sometimes the day of. And so I think as long as we're having these conversations with each other, so that you feel empowered and know that like, okay, this doctor, this nurse shouldn't be talking to me like that, or shouldn't be able to deny this or that, or medication, or say you want a particular test. And I think just on the holistic side, similar, you know, picking back off of that, I'd always say like, you have to know your body, and that's such a privilege when you are a Black person, and depending on your socioeconomic level and your level of awareness and stress and anxiety, you may not even know really that the symptoms you're feeling are a symptom of stress, right? So I think that's why it's so important to have a life that somehow can prioritize mindfulness, because I share that with people, like, that's really just about being self-aware of knowing what's going on with you, and so that you can speak to that, because I always say, you know what's best for you, but we just want to make sure that you're continuing to advocate for yourself and that you have people in place to support you and whatever it is that you think you need and what your body's telling you need.
Yeah, and going off of that, what are some critical questions to ask a non-racist provider? How do you know that the provider is the one for you?
Repeat the question.
What are some important questions to ask to seek out a non-racist provider?
Well, for me, I do want to see a Black woman doctor, because it's just like, I know she'll understand my lingo. I don't have to try to feel like I need to be smart. Like, I can just be myself. But I mean, also some Black people can have bias against Black people. Of course, that happens. So I feel like Branche,
yeah,
I said it right. Yes, Branche was saying like mindfulness and being aware and self-aware about yourself. I feel like when you know when you can vibe with somebody and when you don't, like when you are around a group of girls or a group of guys, you around your friends, you know who you're connecting with and who you're not. So if you first get that inkling, listen to yourself. Like, hey, I don't feel comfortable with this doctor. I feel like he's being rude. And 9 times out of 10, he could be being rude, and you don't have to tolerate that. Stand up for yourself, like how she was saying. Self-advocating is very important. I see it a lot with a lot of people get intimidated when the doctor comes in the room. And so now you shut down. You don't remember all your questions. And, if you're in a primary care situation where there is not a nurse to help advocate for you, then, of course, you're not going to get anything done because you're intimidated. Be self-aware, like she was saying, is very important to definitely know, hey, I don't like this feeling and I want to change. And there's nothing wrong with changing providers. You can go through 5 providers. It doesn't matter. As long as you are comfortable, that is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amen.
To be honest, my perspective when we're talking about in particular, I like to relate everything back to my craft and what I do in terms of like releasing certain stress through your creative work. So I'm not a doctor, I'm more like a mental health advocate and a filmmaker. So what I like to do is change my work to my creative standpoint. When I was going through what I was going through in terms of depression and anxiety, that summer I decided to make a documentary and reach out to everyone else within like college students that also go through the same thing. I honestly didn't know anything called post-grad depression. That was my first time experiencing. That was my first time knowing what it was. And I started to do my studies, and that's how I came about doing a documentary. And all I can say is when it comes down to stuff like this is finding a creative outlet is always the best outlet. Even if it comes down to painting, if you take a paper and you just go to the store, not beauty supply store, I'm lying, 99-cent store, get some paint and just start painting. Like you'll be surprised as what you just painted. Like it's just stuff like that. So I always relate everything back to your creativity and releasing stress another way or find another outlet. And I think someone touched on, I'm not sure if it was which one of you guys, certain people around. At least one of you guys said something about certain people being around you or something like that. Sorry, forgot. But the certain people that you be around and the certain people that you let into your personal space and understanding you in particular, other than other people can tell you what they think, but it's always good to educate yourself and understand how you feel personally. Because yeah, I can say I feel this way, and someone can be like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, but not necessarily. They may not know exactly what you're talking about because they can be experiencing something similar, but not the same exact way. So it's good to just educate yourself on things on that nature.
I love that you said just going to your creative outlet, because it's like when I'm stressed, I like to just write it out. So, and that's what I have to do. And so if you are, doing that, that is what she was saying, keeping that mindfulness, keeping that peace around you, and it just all connects to you, right? And also happiness can correlate to what you're eating. Like if you're stressed, but you're eating bad, then you're only going to put more stress and inflammation on your body. So what Branche said about how stress comes out in different ways, it definitely does. And it can look like you have a certain disease, like an autoimmune deficiency or anything like that, where your body's attacking itself, but it's attacking itself because of what you're eating, you're putting it in such a high stress place. And then what you're actually, the stress that you're actually going under in life can also put you in that high inflammation stage. And when your body is inflamed for so long, it's only going to start shutting down. So you definitely have to start being mindful in that creative outlet, releasing those energies from your body and from your mind. That's definitely going to put yourself back in line to where you're like, hey, let me eat lighter today. Let me feel lighter. I want to just, be light.
I agree, and I just wanted to add one quick thing about creativity that has really set me free this year as someone who prides himself on being a creator. Is you can just create just to create. No one ever has to see what you're doing. I think that right now it's always I gotta create. It's gotta be brand. It's gotta be fire for the gram. It's no. The most importantly is you create for you. That's your healing process, and then of course the projects and the networking and the collabs are gonna come from that naturally, because you're healing yourself and you're elevating yourself to a different mindset. And at the same time, you don't have to ever feel pressure that what you're making has to be seen. You have the right to make something just for yourself. But I just want to encourage people to do that, because I think that we put, especially as Black creatives and Black entrepreneurs, so much pressure that everything we do has to be attached to the hustle or the grind. And it's just no, that's part of our decolonization process of we just get to enjoy things as Black people. The stuff I've created that will never see the light of day, and that doesn't take away from how much it added to me, to my life, and who I am right now because of what I made in private, So
yeah, I do the same thing all the time. Secretly, it's not a secret. It's a secret. I have a Tumblr page nobody knows about, and I start writing poetry. I didn't even know I was a poet. I think it was just I was hurt based upon my situations I was dealing with, and I started writing poetry, and people started to reblog it and stuff. I'm like, wait, whoa, you're not supposed to be doing that. But it's it was getting to other people, and they was connecting with it, and it naturally came along. Just you can do your thing, is sacred, but not want nobody to know about it and stuff. And things that's gonna naturally come along from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Renche, you mentioned decolonizing health, and we talked about this before actually. For those who don't know, talk a little bit about what that means.
What was the first part of the question?
Decolonizing health.
Oh yeah, decolonizing. So basically it's the premise of we are removing and decentering and dismantling all aspects of white supremacy and colonization from our lives as Black liberated people, as people of color, and as Indigenous people. I say that we are Indigenous to this planet, So I think that in that process, what that's gonna look like is inherently anti-capitalist, which is something that's hard for a lot of us to understand, because we're all I'm an entrepreneur, don't get me wrong, but it's we need to remove the pressure of the grind, and that your value is tied to what you produce and what you do. You are an incredible being, no matter what you're doing in your life. It's about who you are as a person, body, mind, soul. The things that you do can, in a sense, be an extension of you, but they aren't who you are. And so I think when we're talking about decolonizing in terms of creativity, it's wait, am I just doing this because I want to get validation and attention? It's okay, well, if I want to get support, that's different. But if I want validation, where's that coming from? Is that from the need of thinking that I have to gain followers? Okay, well then why? And it's asking yourself deeper, why? And it'll always get to the root, honestly, of somehow an effect of white supremacy. And we want to remove that because we want to be Black, liberated, free people, and free to create and choose or to do or not do whatever we want. Which why everyone here is we're so passionate about health and wellness, because it's if your lifestyle doesn't speak to that freedom and to that truth, then you are you're not taking care of yourself and you're running yourself into the ground. And that's why we see why our community, as creative and talented and brilliant and as strong as we are the hardest hit, because we have so much against us. So I think it's just about really asking yourself personally, how is this mindset contributing to capitalism and white supremacy? And how is that, or that thought or that belief about myself? And that's a huge learning and growth that as we live here, it's going to be a lifelong journey of decolonizing, right? I'm not going to wake up tomorrow like a fully decolonized person. That's just impossible. But I feel that awareness and that mindfulness alone will help you set yourself free from like the anxiety of like the need to produce, not in terms of taking care of yourself, but in terms of like, that is my only worth and value to this world, as if I'm making something in a certain way. That is not true. You are so worthy and so valuable as you are. And we as Black people need to be taught that. And it's hard. We're just taught that we have to grind and we have to shine and we have to flex. And it's like, no, you just need to take care of yourself and breathe and rest and nap.
Mm-hmm. Going off of that, what other mindsets should we be leaving in the last decade, and how should we be adjusting moving forward?
You said what mind shift should we leave?
Yeah, my sound is weird right now. I'm so sorry, you guys.
Oh, it's fine. No, I think that Branche hit it right on the head with, wanting to feel validated and stuff like that. It's just like you focus on you, in the Bible, it definitely says, mind your business in 1 Thessalonians. I didn't even know that. It was like, mind your own business. And it's like, and when you focusing on just yourself, it brings in like, okay, more self-awareness. Who am I? Why do I like this? Or do I even like this? I mean, with, taking all of the things that we've been taught in this world and just washing them away and really trying to start over new. Like, we are kings and queens, and they didn't teach us that. And that's not how we're brought up. We're brought up to where like, you were a slave and now you're trying to, now you have to do this so you can try to be on top with them. But it's like, no, that's not where we come from. So it's just like, the mindset shift that I would say to leave in the past is, first, you don't have to be like everybody else. You are you and you are special. You're right. Focusing on you and uplifting others is only going to push you forward, move you forward. You're only going to progress when you love on others and focus on yourself. So being that and doing that, I say, is the mindset shift I would leave and take away for 2021 or 20, whatever this year is going to be. Definitely love yourself, focus on yourself, and then love on others.
I also agree with that as well. I think the mindset that we shouldn't leave is that we don't always have to communicate with people. People feel like like certain people that you communicate on a daily basis feel like as soon as you start communicating with them, it's a them problem and like you have an issue with them, and it's not even about that. It's more of I need to be secluded. I need to reason with myself. I need to understand myself more. I need to like move myself away, isolate myself. And people take it so personal, and that's where there's this confrontation or disagreement that goes on to your relationship with people. That's why I say you need to remove certain people out of your life that don't really quite understand you. You have to have people around you that also get you. So that should be another thing that you should leave back. If people don't quite understand you personally, then you leave them back as well. Because when it's time for you to go to, I say my spiritual growth, when it's time for you to go through your spiritual growth, when it's time for you to understand yourself more, those people can be a blockage to your healing. So, and it's not even trying to say that they're negative people. They're just not people for you at the time being. Maybe later down on the road, they can be people for you, but people take things so personal. So another thing is leave back taking things too personal. It's not always about you. It's about someone else as well. And that's where people get things misconstrued.
Yeah,
exactly. Love that.
Yeah,
I want to say something. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I don't know, it's not so much about what I'm leaving, but what I'm definitely have been focusing on of all of 2020 and bringing in is just, you can't pour from an empty cup. And like, similar to what everyone shared on this panel, like I didn't protest, which was so hard for me because I'm like so entrenched in my community. And I was like, I have to rest. I have to take care of myself. I can't give anything else. I'm tapped out and giving, and I need to pour into myself. And I think all of us as Black people were just taught give, sacrifice, continue. And it's like, please know that I have been resting all of 2020. I'm not even kidding. It's just been a huge tenet. I just need to pour into myself right now so that I can be the leader that I want to be, So I just encourage all Black people to think about, where is my cup? Is it empty? Is it full? And where do I need to be pouring into myself? And a huge part of that, I believe, is rest completely. Like literally, like you said, for our immune system. like to keep your immune system strong.
Yeah, this is so important because there is such a stigma when it comes to African Americans and mental health. And I think it is particularly important to open up the conversation because it's been closed off for so long. So what steps do you think are needed to mitigate this stigma?
Well, I think that first, I just wanted to say that I love what he said about not communicating with everyone. And like when I got off Instagram for about that month or so, it was like I have my own thoughts, and I like having my own thoughts, and I just like listening to myself and actually what I think, and not being influenced by everybody else. But I think to mitigate the stigma, I definitely think this panel, you're doing such a great job, Claudine. Like, it's just amazing that you're bringing awareness to the people, especially in college. And like, when I was in college, I wasn't even thinking about my mental health, you know, but now it is such a big thing that it takes a toll on your mind, body, and spirit. So you can definitely be sick from stress. You can definitely get overwhelmed so much that you have a nervous breakdown and you have to go and take care of yourself. So I feel like getting ahead of those things, being more agile and being more, prepared, it definitely helps mitigate these stigmas that, okay, yeah, Black people, they don't like mental health, or we can't go see a therapist. And I really feel like our generation is definitely letting that go. I feel like we don't even listen to that anymore. I have my counselor on speed dial. So if something's going on, I'm like, sis, I need a session today. So I feel like that's a lot of my friends too. And it's just like when I would say that to my cousin, like, oh, he needs counseling, to my dad, and my dad was like, that's that college education. And it's just like, that's their generation. They didn't hear that so often, but now you see it on TV shows. Insecure, she in counseling. We know Molly needed counseling, okay? And it was like, over her. But it was like, you see it in TV shows, you see it in our talks and on radio, and people are actually diving into how can I better take care of myself. And I feel like that's just keeping those strides definitely helps mitigate the stigma of us.
And I know many people are going into yoga and meditation, and Ms. Fastana, you're a huge advocate for yoga.
Yeah.
So how important has it been for you during quarantine, and how can those who have never done it before approach it?
Yeah, I think that's why I think it's so important for us to have as many Black and brown yoga instructors. I practice Reiki, I do all these different healing techniques, because similarly, also as a Christian and growing up in the church, there would be a disconnect between mental health and support, because people would be like, okay, I'm going to pray over you. And I'm like, okay. And you know what I mean? I still need a therapist. Like there's something else that's happening. So I think I just consider it in the same vein as like yoga being a tool to address what we're talking about. So physically, especially if you go to a class and do it online, you can keep your screen off. That's the beauty of right now too. You don't have to feel like anyone's looking at you. But things that are talking about like restorative or yin classes, like these are a lot slower, and it's not like those intense, super like fitness versions. And I think what's important about that is, as Nurse Joy will tell you, like there's a system in our body called the parasympathetic system. And that's a system that is our fight or flight or our rest and digest. And so what that system does is it tells your body, okay, it's okay to calm down. You are safe here. What we don't realize is as Black people, most of us are operating in fight or flight all the time. We're in hyper anxious, we're hyper aware, we're feeling stressed, we have shallow breathing. And so what yoga does is it brings you into the present, into your mind, that mindfulness moment. You're not thinking about the argument you had with a friend. You're not thinking about work. You're in right here. I'm in my body. Two, it's that body connection that we're all talking about, which is how does my body feel right now? It trained me to know how my body feels. And I don't know how to explain it. Where it's like before I didn't really like feel myself. I didn't know my body in an intimate way. And I think that's just like natural for a Black person to feel kind of disconnected from their body. But more importantly, I think it literally physically decreases the effects of anxiety in the body. And that's why I push so hard for there to be Black instructors, because we often will feel safer and will feel more welcomed, and we'll have someone guiding us through who has our lived experience, right? So even in terms of going to someone maybe has the body type or size of yours that feels more transparent to you, because you always want to have a guide in no matter what you're learning, who's really authentically reflecting like what you've been through. So that's really why I love yoga. I think spiritually, I tell people, I'm like, well, you can make anything in life spiritual. You can make your cooking tonight spiritual. That's about your own connection to yourself and God and to spirit. But it's really the practice of like being very, very mindful and aware and letting your body just to digest, to decompress. And the last little bit I'll say about it, because I could talk about it forever, is just our connection to the breath, especially right now with COVID. And everyone's chanting, like, I can't breathe. And it's like, I talk about Eric Garner all the time in the beginning of my classes. And I say that we breathe for those who can't anymore. And we reclaim that. But our breath literally cleanses us. And we don't realize that we are such shallow breathers. We aren't even doing deep breaths. And so it's like having time to breathe new life and energy into yourself. Like the breath work part of it alone is so healing and can release so much tension, especially right now when there's so much anxiety, fear, anger swirling around. And those aren't bad. Like no emotion is good or bad. It's just that it can overcome you and it can have negative effects, right? Like those are just human feelings. Like that's a human experience. So I vouch for yoga all the time. It's been fun getting especially like my super cisgendered hetero Black guy friends in on it. And I think it's really important as we decolonize that, where they're like, well, I'm not flexible. I'm like, you don't have to be flexible. That's just what we've been marketed to say of like what yoga is. Like yoga is about the breath first and foremost. So that's my whole little thing, but we can get into it another time. But I feel like yoga, meditation is a form of yoga. Your prayer time, that's yoga, that's meditation. So just making sure that you are at least giving yourself a couple of minutes, I say minimum 10 minutes a day of just like trying to quiet your mind and just breathing, allowing that for yourself. That'll go a long way.
Very quickly, what are some exercises we can do for our breathing on live?
Oh, like right now?
Sure.
Oh, what I always instruct people to do is put one hand on your chest or like your heart center, and then your other hand on your belly. And so when I'm explaining about the deep breathing, nice straight back.
Everyone follow along.
Yeah, feel free to join us. Ideally, if it's available to you, having both feet firmly on the ground because you want to feel grounded and safe and centered. But as you breathe and start with your belly button, so take a big deep inhale and feel the belly button going in towards, and then you'll feel the air going up towards your chest. So it's like what we call like a two-part breath. So it's deep in belly up through your chest, and then a deep exhale out. And there's times where I could have been at work, and there's times you can like pop into the stall, or you can sit at your desk and just give yourself a few breaths, and you can tell yourself whatever it is you need. Like the first thing I usually say is like, I'm safe. Because when you're feeling anxiety, that's your body telling you that it feels fear, like it's scared of something, even if you don't even realize that you feel that way. So I usually start with I am safe, and then whatever kind of intuitively is coming up for me, I'll say like other little affirmations. But you can switch hands too, whatever feels good to you. But that's technically what we call like a holding pose, and that's a very comforting way. And people will see me, we'll just be in a conversation, and I may not be doing the breath, but I'll at least do the pose because I'm like telling my body like, you're good, you're having a hard conversation, but you're good, you're safe. Yeah, I would say doing that. I hope that answered.
Good, thank you for that. That was good. I hope you all did it and took notes also. So, finally, let's just talk about our recent graduates, the class of 2020. It's not an easy time for all of us, especially for our graduates who have worked so hard to get to walk across the stage and not be able to. So what words of advice or encouragement do you have for our recent graduates?
I have a few. When it comes to recent grads, like I said earlier, when I first graduated in 2018, I wasn't really sure what I was feeling. There's this phase that you go through, and it's called post-grad depression, and it is real. And it's because you're so used to a cycle of living. Like you're so used to waking up, going to school, from some people 1 year old. So when you're finished with school, it's kind of like this area when like, you know, you're about to start work, you know, you're about to hit the real world, but it's just like this weird funk. So you're not really sure what you're feeling at the moment. And your anxiety and depression, some people have never had anxiety and depression, and all of a sudden they have anxiety and depression as soon as they graduate college because they're anxious to know what's next or anxious to know what to do with the following steps of their lives. And they get depressed because, for instance, you may not have a job opportunity right away, or what you had planned isn't necessarily what's happening at the moment. And that's what a lot of people that graduated in 2020, that's their case in terms of they had things planned out and it can't happen at the moment because of the COVID that's happening. So they get a little worked up, nervous, and feel really anxious about themselves. So all I have to say is you're not going through it by yourself. Other people is going through it as well. It doesn't justify like, hey, it's okay to go through that. But it's natural. I want you to know that it's something that everyone deals with. And ways that you can cope with it, I say tackle everything creatively, communicate with certain people. Always be sure who you communicate with. Do not tell everyone how you're feeling. I don't suggest that off the strength that the energy may not be reciprocated. You may not get the feedback that you want, and then you feel more down about yourself. So the people that's close to you, communicate with them. And if you need to isolate, but don't isolate yourself too much to the point that you get in your head, because that happens a lot as well.
Thank you so much, Heman. Thank you to all the amazing panelists. You are doing such good work in the Black community and beyond. You're all incredible. And it was wonderful speaking with each of you. So I hope that you're taking notes. All of your notebooks, your planners are probably all full at this point, but we are not done yet. Stay tuned. There is one more segment left. Thank you, Heman. Thank you, Dr. Kyoshi Alexander. And thank you so much, Franche.
Up next, we're bringing on the founder of CultureCon and communications director at Bravo and E! Entertainment, Imani Ellis, and the opening of the live after show, bringing you all into the conversation. And it's all up next, right after the break.
Yeah. They ain't gonna like it. They ain't gonna like it. I be getting to the money. Everybody mad. Think I'm getting too much money. Everybody mad. Same old nigga from the block. Same old nigga with the prop. Same old nigga from the trap. Everybody hated on her, then he bounced right back. I just spent a whole lot of time overseas. Never let my money, cause you know I won't cheese. I've been in my hometown playing with the keys when they fell off the boat. Yeah, I'm fucking fucking leave. I know it's a whole lot of niggas that was hating.
Okay, I see. We can see you. We can see you. Okay, I think we're on. Okay, well, our next speaker is the founder of CultureCon and the Creative Collective New York City, a community and creative agency dedicated to facilitating brave spaces for multicultural creatives. It has since parlayed into the fastest growing community devoted to creatives of color in New York City who are looking to cultivate relationships that go beyond the business card. Past speakers include Tracy Ellis Ross, Will Smith, Regina King, Lena Waithe, Spike Lee, John Legend, Nick Cannon, and so much more, from workshops on building generational wealth to keynotes with incredible cultural icons. CultureCon feels like a creative homecoming. She is also a communications director at NBC Universal. We cannot wait to hear from you. Please welcome the wonderful and super talented Imani Ellis. Hi, Imani.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. It's a good day. It's a good day.
So, I mean, you have such an expansive resume between your day job at Bravo and E! and your company, The Creative Collective. How have you been balancing so many hats during this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to prioritizing, right? And kind of making a list and figuring out which fire you have to put out today and which fire you need to put out in a few hours. And so for me, it's just been really juggling it all and just kind of, taking it day by day.
Yeah, we can all relate. We're mainly students on this panel, just figuring out how to do everything as we go. So was there a moment at Vanderbilt where you knew I definitely want to have this as a career? And how did you foster your interest in entertainment?
I think, for me, knowing what I wanted to do, a lot of it came from kind of trying things and figuring out that's what I didn't want to do. So I thought I wanted to be a talent agent. My dream was to work for Drake, and I was going to be a talent agent, book him on all his commercials. And then I worked at a talent agency, and it really wasn't what I had expected. So I pivoted, and that's how I became a publicist. So I did internships at Viacom, ESPN, creative artist agency, and every single experience kind of put me in the direction of what I wanted to do one day.
That's awesome. And I think it's so important to cultivate a space, mentors or accountability partners while you're in school. Did you have any mentors growing up that helped you contribute to your growth professionally?
Yeah, I think, my parents are two of my biggest mentors. They've known me my whole life, and so they've helped me navigate a lot of things. But I really suggest having like a buffet of mentors. Like instead of going to one person for everything, I kind of have mentors when I need, business advice, and mentors when I need professional corporate advice. And so there's not kind of one person that's been my mentor. It's kind of been, just kind of getting wisdom and insight from a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah, and something that's super important, and you mentioned this before, is cultivating a space where you have a lot of people that you can look up to. And we're in a space where Black students interested in media, entertainment, look up to you even. So what does that mean to you, being a role model for the next generation?
I mean, I think it's required. I think we all have to kind of open the door and leave it open for whoever's coming next. And there have been so many amazing, Black women who have opened the door for me. And so it's the least I could do to kind of pay it forward. So to even hear that I'm a role model is like, it's crazy because I feel like just yesterday I was doing informational. So time really does fly.
Definitely. And I think media has such a big responsibility right now to amplify Black voices on television, on the news. So talk about, why that's so important and the role and obligation that you have in speaking out and amplifying our voices during this time.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we've been saying Black Lives Matter for centuries now. So it's interesting that the world is, catching up. But I think that's why it's so important to be consistent in your vision and consistent in your passion. So when the world does catch up, you've already been doing the work. So with the Creative Collective, we're 4 years old. And so we've been creating these places for creatives of color for the last 4 years. And it's amazing that CultureCon has gotten the traction and the growth. But it started in my living room, not because I wanted to create this big empire, but really because I just wanted to create a place for us. So I think, again, I love that it's having a moment, but I would encourage everyone just to, find your passion. And I saw the panel before was just saying, everything doesn't have to be monetized. You can have hobbies, you can have passions outside of your job. So I think, to answer your question, it's like, this is a moment and I'm glad that we're having it, but we were doing the work before it became like a trend.
I like that you mentioned that because I've noticed that a lot of brands will release, their statements and it's like, we've always been here. We've always been doing the work. And it's like, you're just now catching up. So I find that really interesting because it's like, it's really not new news. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great that we're having these conversations and it's great that we're seeing, a rise in empathy in America overall. And so I'm not saying that this moment isn't necessary. I just think that it's also important to recognize that this moment isn't necessarily new if you're Black in America.
That's true because we've been going through this for centuries. Yeah, it's good to see that, we're starting to see it be amplified and increase and people are noticing it more. That's really important. And so I know that, it gets hard sometimes being a Black woman in this industry and being underrepresented. So my next question to you is, how do you deal with like rejection or not being recognized or seen for certain things or your vision not being taken seriously? How do you deal with that and rise from it?
I mean, that's such a great question. I don't know, like I'm an athlete at heart. And so, when you think of business, the bottom line is to be successful. And so I knew that when I started as an intern, as a page, as a coordinator, getting coffee and cars and all of those things that people never talk about on Instagram, like I knew that those were the fundamentals of, one day becoming the director of communications. So everything that I was doing, I treated it like it was the most important assignment. And the reason that I bring that up is because I want to be realistic with students. Like, you probably won't go into your first job on the first day and have an idea and the CEO take it to market. Like that's probably not going to happen, but you have to treat, anything how you'll do everything. And so I was able to rise up through the ranks because I consistently did really great work. And so now as a director, I'm able to start all types of initiatives. So I love that you said amplify our voices, because I created a program called Amplify Our Voices for Bravo. And it's a whole conversation series talking about being Black in America, police brutality. It's on Bravo, it's on E! Now, could I have just come in the first day and like launched this series? Probably not. So I think it's, a lot about kind of building trust and consistency, and then, you're able to kind of like take your dreams where you want them to go. And in terms of rejection, I mean, I think sometimes I have to, just be objective about it. Like I have to say, was that the best idea? Like, was it the most thought out? Like, and that's being a woman of color. That's being a woman. That's just being a person. You're going to have rejection, whether you're white, blue, green, or Black. So I think you have to just be really objective in terms of like, are they overstepping because of my race? Or did I underdeliver? Because you don't want everything to become like, it's because I'm Black, but you do need to have discernment to know when it is.
I like that you mentioned that, because, oftentimes when you're a new professional, I think from, going to job fairs, like there's this perception that, you go into your first day at work and you think that you can do anything you want, but you're not delivering the best work. And so I think it's important, like you mentioned, to, take everything very seriously and, don't, not try your 100% on anything that you do.
Yeah.
So what have you learned, as a woman in this industry, what are some things that you really take away?
I would say I've learned to really bet on myself. And I know that sounds so cliche, but I've learned to really trust my instincts. So I used to be in these meetings and I was too shy to sit at the table. So I would sit like in the couch in the back, and they would just be talking about different ideas, and I would have ideas, but I just thought, you're too junior. There are people that have been here longer than you. Like, you need to just kind of wait your turn. And then, someone would blurt out an idea, and I was like, wait, I was going to say that. And so what I really learned is like, I have to trust myself. And if I think that something is the right thing to do, or I think something that is a horrible thing to do, just to vocalize it, because I think, people want someone who has an opinion, and they want someone who, is going to make the business better. And I think the second thing that I've had to learn is just to be really honest with myself. So every time it was time for a promotion, I've been promoted 6 times, but you have to be careful that you're not just like, oh, it's been a year, time to get promoted. Because remember, from kindergarten until senior year of college, you've been promoted every year of your life. It's like, promotion, I'm a junior, now I'm a senior. When you get into, the real world, you can be in a role for 2 years, you can be in a role for 4 years. So I think I just always had to be honest with myself and say, okay, do I just want to be promoted, or like, am I honestly ready to do the next step?
I think, how do you know that you're ready? Like, how do you know that you're ready to, get promoted to the next step in your career?
Yeah, I think you have to objectively look at the role above you and ask yourself, what's the gap between how they're performing and how I'm performing? So if you're a coordinator and the level above you is a manager, and that person is, I'll just use publicity because that's my job. If they're booking national press campaigns, but you've never emailed a reporter, you're not ready to be a manager. So what I would do is I would over deliver. I would learn how to pitch. I would learn what they do. I would get informationals. I would ask them if they need help. And usually how promotions happen is you're probably doing the role above you before you get promoted. So what ends up happening is you're a coordinator doing manager role work, and it gets to the point that your boss is like, you're literally outperforming, you're not a coordinator anymore. And so there were times when I was a coordinator, but I was working on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, which is like one of our biggest shows. And people could not, they were like, wait, but you're a coordinator? So it got to the point where it didn't make any sense that I was a coordinator. And so you kind of have to get to that point where you're like, am I operating at the level that's more senior to me? And then just be honest with yourself.
Well, that's really good. And especially for our interns, people who are interning this summer, of course, you can't actually be in the physical vicinity. You have to be behind a computer screen doing the work online. So how can interns now really fully deliver that 110% while you're on the computer screen?
I think a few things. I would look for patterns, right? So life is like a series of recycled events. So if in your internship, every Monday, your supervisor, asks you to look out for something or do something, like I would just put that calendar invite on my calendar and have it to her before she asks me, like just anticipating what she needs. And then I would also fill in the gaps. So it's like, if you have your one-on-one with her, if you don't have a one-on-one, I would be proactive and say, is it possible to get a one-on-one on the calendar? And you can use that time to figure out, what does her day look like? Does she need help on anything else? Because you got to remember, it's like the more valuable you can make yourself. And this is even beyond internship. This is like 9 to 5. The more valuable you make yourself, the more irreplaceable you are. So if you're an intern who's so strong, you're like acting like a coordinator, then chances are at the end of your internship, you've become so valuable that they're like, oh, wait, no, we need you to be on the team, and they'll find a space for you. And so I would kind of create these projects without anyone really asking me. I would, create a project. I would submit it to my supervisor, like, hey, I noticed that you guys didn't have your list in alphabetical order. Is it okay if I alphabetize these lists? They're kind of disorganized. And she would be like, oh my, yes, please. And so I would create these little assignments for myself. So by the time it came for me to leave, they offered me a job.
That's amazing. And that ties in with Brave too. Having brave faces for creators of color, bravely putting stuff out there and bravely saying, here is my value, and recognize it. And I like that. So I've never heard the phrase like brave faces for creators of color before. Like, what made you come up with that? Like, what was the inspiration behind it?
Honestly, it came because I kept hearing safe spaces, and I 1,000% agree that we need safe spaces. But then I also recognize that in addition to safe spaces, we need spaces where we can be our unapologetic selves. We need brave spaces. And, bravery doesn't always have to be the loudest person in the room, doesn't always have to be, the most confident person in the room. It could just be like kind of what you just said. I'm going to stand up for myself today. I'm going to go out on a limb today. Because what's the worst thing that can happen? I think through that a lot, in terms of, risk analysis. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen if I ask for more work? They're probably going to give it to you.
And so Black creatives who are watching and want to know how to get their start in the industry, if they're passionate about the work, is there anything you would tell them about putting out an idea, what they feel, if they feel like they have no help or they're at the bottom?
Yeah, I think you just have to really spend some time with it. And I know that it can be challenging, to put out any, type of work because you don't want it to be criticized. But, in reality, it's kind of like any kind of feedback really just steers you in a stronger direction. So we used to have a CultureCon logo, and it's evolved over time. But if we never put it out there, it never would have evolved. So I would really say, like, just get started and be okay with feedback, because it's not personal. It really will help you grow.
That's a really good point, because a lot of times, you know, creatives get so nitpicky and you're like, I can't release it yet. It's not perfect. So like, how do you go about that feeling of like perfectionism and wanting to wait years and years and years before you put yourself out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think perfectionism is the enemy of progress, right? If you're waiting for something to be perfect, you're really, you know, holding out for people to see the blessings that you can put into the world. And so I think progress beats perfection any day, because the creative who is waiting for something to be perfect will always be behind the creative who was just, you know, continually like honing their skill and honing their craft. So yeah, I mean, it's like the chicken or the egg. You can't get something right until you put it into the world. So you might as well just put it into the world.
Yeah, and you know, I want to segue into the activism of being a Black creative. I think activism goes beyond just posting on Instagram or reposting graphics. There's a plethora of things that Black creatives can do to support those affected the most by COVID in the Black community. So what are some ways, you know, in which young Black creatives can make a tangible impact during these times?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to your point, there's so many different ways. Activism doesn't show up in just one form. You know, it can look like creating graphics that are easily shared, that break down information. It could look like, you know, passing along petitions. I think the thing that we've seen because of COVID and school, you know, all being virtual, is that Black Twitter literally changed the world. I mean, we were able to get companies that have never spoken out about race to donate millions of dollars to the NAACP. And so what that shows is there's so much power in our collective voice, but we need all of those voices. So if you're marching, if you're not marching, but you're signing petitions, if you're not, you know, marching, but you're creating infographics, or, you know, you're donating, I think all of it helps. And so you just have to kind of figure out where does my piece of the puzzle fit in this larger puzzle, and then just march forward.
Good, and you mentioned this earlier. I want to get your thoughts on brands releasing like who's on their board, discussing how much money is flowing in the company. Like, how valuable do you think these conversations and spreadsheets are?
You know, it's a start. I think it's a start. You know, 5 years ago, I never could have imagined some of these brands saying Black Lives Matter, which that within itself is for another day. But I think, you know, bigger than just kind of the white font on the Black background, right? We really need to see what the makeup of these companies are. Because if nothing changes, if, you know, you're going to keep putting out statements, but you're not really changing your infrastructure. So I think Pull Up for Change is a perfect kind of platform for kind of people wanting more. And this is a generation, you know, I just was actually watching on CNN. This is a generation, you know, we don't fall for the memes and the Instagram posts. We created them, right? So you can't just like post something and think that we're not going to see what your executive board looks like. So I think that accountability is really important. And I'm excited to kind of see these companies get a little uncomfortable in terms of realizing that they're late. But it's okay. It's okay that they're late. I think that we would rather have a company say, we're sorry we're late, here's what we're doing, than just trying to throw money at it and not really doing anything else.
Do you think that they can go beyond just a number release? Do you think companies will start hiring more people of color? Or on the flip side, will this incentivize more Black people to see that they have a space there and be like more willing to apply?
I think it's going to have to be a little bit of both. I think that companies are recognizing that they were very vulnerable during this time because they're scrounging for, you know, Black insights and they don't have any Black employees to ask. And it becomes glaringly obvious that there's been missteps. And so not only is it more recruiting, but it's nurturing the talent once they get there, right? So if you're a coordinator, but you look up and you don't see a single executive that's Black, that kind of tells you that your journey at that company, what does that really look like if there's no leadership that looks like you? So I think that, you know, recruitment is part of it. And I also think that, you know, not for nothing, like, you know, this is a generation of college students that are super active and outspoken and brave. And so in is going to come this new generation that's like, listen, this isn't the 1950s. Like, you need to pull up. Pair that with my generation that's going to be, you know, at the leadership level to encourage, you know, this new wave. I think it's really exciting.
I like that, and I'm actually really hopeful because, you know, a lot of my generation, Gen Z, you know, we're naturally really outspoken and ready to, you know, be on the front lines. And then we have millennials who are, you know, appreciating our our outlooks and vision. So I really like to see that there is some hope out there. Do you, is there anything that you think could be done more when it comes to these companies who are releasing statements? Do you think, what more can they do to support our community, do you think?
I mean, there's so much more they can do. You know, I think it varies case by case depending on the company, but I think it really is about starting with the Black employees they already have, because chances are the Black employees could see these problems from a mile away. So, you know, who are in your meetings? Who needs to be invited to these meetings? What blind spots exist? I think that, you know, it can become overwhelming when you're like, where do you start? But I think if you kind of take a step back, it's like, start in your home, right? Start with what you already have before you're like just gonna hire a bunch of Black people. Like, we want that too. But talk to your current Black employees and your white ones too, and your non-white, non-Black employees, and talk about, you know, the unconscious bias that exists, the microaggressions that exist, being discriminated because you're wearing braids at work. These are things that, you know, I think need to be fixed internally before you're even trying to recruit talent.
All right, so before we segue right into questions from the viewers, keeping in mind the mission behind your brand, creating spaces for people of color that are brave, we want to know, Imani, when do you feel the bravest?
Oh, wow, that's great. I feel the bravest when I 1,000% want to run backwards, but I know that I have to push forward. So I think, you know, for me, it's recognizing that bravery is not the absence of fear. It doesn't mean that you don't feel nervous or anxious or unsure. You will probably even doubt yourself, but it's knowing that you have a vision and a purpose and there's something larger that's pulling you forward. And so I feel the bravest when I'm kind of walking in my purpose, even when I'm
so much, Imani, for your genuine advice, your expansive knowledge of the industry. I hope you are all soaking in everything, taking advice in, and asking such great questions throughout. I can't really see them all, but I'm sure you guys are all taking a lot of notes. It was wonderful meeting you, Imani. Keep being amazing, and thank you so much for your time.
Of course, congratulations on this whole day. It was really, really awesome. Talk to you soon.
Bye. We're not done just yet. Stay tuned for the closing of all panels and the opening of our after show. That's right, we're bringing in you all for the Black College America and Coronavirus After Show, incorporating opinions from you guys during a live recorded discussion of the panels. With limited seats, you will be able to hop on live and talk about what just went down, action steps, and ways you can make things happen on your own campus and your own community. We're squashing the narrative of division in our community right here, right now. So bring your friends. It's the roundtable you don't want to miss. And you have a seat so after the break. So amazing speaking with each of you, hearing your insights, and collectively working towards a brighter future. From this event alone, I know we're moving in the right direction. And I want to let each of you know that change begins with us. It starts with you, and I can't wait to see all of the wonderful things you'll do in the future. Remember to keep educating yourself, keep thriving, keep the fight going, and take care of yourself in the process. A huge thank you to all of the amazing panelists, speakers and our opening speakers, the sponsors, the MRC and DEI at Binghamton University, everyone helping backstage, the whole team. I appreciate all of you. This was Black College America and the coronavirus. Thank you all so much for coming from the bottom of my heart. Love you guys. Keep shining your light. Bye, y'all.